Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Revenge is best served from the dead. My name is Danny Donahue, and I am not your ordinary 14-year-old boy from Southern California. Well, I guess I may be ordinary, except for one teeny thing. But I guess that's normal. Nobody is just ordinary. Heck, what does ordinary even mean? I guess I will never know. Because I am not your ordinary boy. I am Danny Donahue, the boy who helps ghosts cross into their next life. Movies weren't wrong. There are ghosts on Earth. And sometimes they might get stuck on Earth because they have unfinished business with someone or themselves. Ugh. They can't even get peace after they die. I thought, when we die, we are finally at peace. I guess, sadly not. Most of the time, it's something simple, like apologizing to someone, or something similar to that. But other times, it was hard. It wasn't because a task was too hard or complicated. No, it was because the ghosts themselves didn't even know what they had left to do. And that is something frustrating. I know what you may be thinking. What do his parents think? Probably think he belongs in the lunny bin. If you thought that, you thought wrong. His parents, Estelle and Banrable Donahue, possessed the same abilities their son had. But this story is my weirdest adventure yet. I still wonder if it actually even happened. It's kind of crazy, and Danny doesn't want to brag or anything, but he was quite awesome, if he had to say. This story started when my family and I had moved from Southern California to New York City. We only had moved here because this was the city populated with wandering souls, which just meant more stress on me. My social life was non-existent. My parents had homeschooled me since second grade, when I began helping them out. But this unbelievable, well, me saying ghosts are real is already quite unbelievable, story started when I moved into my family's new apartment in the busy part of New York. When my parents weren't super cool ghost helpers, they were journalists. And might I add, mighty fine when they did their work. But that meant they barely had time to spend with me. I had opened the bright red door to the quite large apartment, opening my arms and breathing the new place in. I was quite excited to be living here. I never had been to New York before, and it seemed magical. When I had walked into my plain, empty room, I spotted a ghost. Great, can't even sleep one night without someone barging in. Danny grumbled to himself. I didn't think the ghost boy saw me. Who wouldn't? I am pretty handsome, Danny thought, running a hand through his thick black hair. I don't think the dead boy had seen me. And if he hadn't acknowledged me yet. Then the ghost boy had walked over to me from fiddling the sustains and slammed the door behind me. I just realized that the ghost thought I couldn't see him. After I realized that I went over to the formerly alive boy and said, "Hi." Never thought I would have spooked a ghost, but I guess I did, because it looked like the ghost seemed startled. You can see me. The tall ghost pointed up and down to himself, unsure. "Since I'm talking to you, I'm pretty sure I can," I said, as it was obvious. "Sorry. I'm really dead." The best scenario would be that I was dreaming, but am not, right? The ghost mumbled on. "No, you are sadly dead, and I'm alive, and I can see you, but other people can't. Well, most people can't. By the way, my name is Danny," he stated while putting down boxes of his random junk on the floor. "Well, nice to meet you, Danny. My name is Nicholas." The ghost, Nicholas, smiled at him. "Danny, come here. We need your help." Danny's dad hollered from outside the apartment. I was sure the whole floor could hear him. "Sure thing." "Wait, hold on. You and your parents are going to be living here?" Nicholas questioned. "And can they see me? Or are you like some chosen one thing?" "Yes, and yes. My parents can see ghosts too. And our job is to help you move on," Danny said, opening the door and walking over to help his parents. But Nicholas had stayed in the same spot, not wanting to talk to Danny's parents. After all, he hadn't had any interaction with a living or a dead person in 2 years. He had gotten used to staying in the shadows and just listening to other people talk. I had come back with another enormous and heavy box and dropped it on the floor, making a loud whump sound. "So, Nicholas," Danny said, testing his name on how it felt in his mouth. "Why are you still here?" "I don't know." Nicholas shrugged. "Then think of something stopping you from resting in peace." Then I walked back out of my room to grab more boxes. I had told my parents I had to set up my room and didn't want them to see it. Only after I finished, so I would have an excuse to stay in my room. And plus, Nicholas didn't want to see my parents for some reason. Nicholas and I talked in hush whispers for hours that day, but he still couldn't think of any reason why he would still be a ghost. But a ghost, technically, is a person who is only partially dead. But he could think of anything. I had, though, learned that Nicholas was 47, but he had died 2 years ago in a drowning accident. I had urged him to tell me the reason for how he drowned, but he didn't say. Until an hour of my excellent persuasion, he told me that he couldn't swim and died before anyone got to him. I always knew I had good convincing skills. A couple of days passed, and still nothing. Danny just wanted to bring Nicholas to his parents, but Nicholas always refused. Ugh, if I went up to him, they would have probably figured out the reason for his reason to stay with the living. Okay, Danny, I think I might know why I am not really dead yet. Nicholas huffed out. He seemed slightly embarrassed, but more so angry. Finally! Been waiting for this for a while, Danny said, stretching back on his chair, taking a break from an easy he had to complete by 2 hours. Okay, so I lied. I didn't die by drowning, just to let you know I can swim. But I was drowned by my kids exactly 2 years ago. And I think the forgive and forget part hasn't exactly worked. And I think I might want revenge on those brats. Nicholas said in a hushed voice, not sure if he really trusted Danny. But if Danny said that he could help him, he might finally get avenged for his death. My eyes literally felt like they might come out of my eye sockets. Hold on, buddy. Just what? Danny said, shock clearly visible on his face. The ghost I always helped had simple tasks, and maybe once in a blue moon, it might be a little interesting. But this was just out of this world crazy. No more like out of the universe. So basically, you're telling me that you were some rich dude with spoiled brats for kids, and then when you were about to die, you decided to change your will so that your sister gets most of it? Danny asked, still thinking this was a really small reason to kill your dad, even if he was a billionaire and didn't even give you 1% of it. Yes, but you see, before I could change the will, they somehow found out about me changing it, so they killed me, so they would get over 80% of my money and estate. What happened to your wife? Danny wondered. She died a year before me, Nicholas said, with a sad smile, probably remembering his wife. So what do you want to do? I'm assuming you want payback, Danny said, raising an eyebrow. Yes, and I have been planning it for 2 years, so it's basically foolproof, Nicholas said with a smile. Family drama. Danny chuckled a little while thinking this. Then, that day, Nicholas told me what he had in mind, and I am not going to lie. It was quite clever. I guess when you have 2 years to think of a plan, and not any plan. A plan to get revenge on your killers. You would want to perfect it. Nicholas had been living in Danny's room for almost a year, and since Nicholas started living in this apartment, he always scared future tenants. Except for the Donahues, because they could see him. The strange thing was my parents still hadn't spotted Nicholas yet. Strange indeed. Nicholas had been living in this apartment specifically because it was right next to, you would never guess who, his kids' apartments. Every time he saw them, he felt sadness for what he let them become. But then the sadness turned into anger, and his blood started boiling whenever he looked at them for what he did to him. The next day, we started putting Nicholas's plan into action. But for one part of it, I had to borrow something from my parents without raising suspicion. I had to borrow a special drink that if a ghost drank it, they would be invisible, but be able to touch not too heavy stuff. I thought talking the elixir would be difficult, but it proved to be easy since my mom was out meeting some new friends she had made and my dad had gone grocery shopping. So I took the elixir with ease. After he got it, he gave it to Nicholas. And Nicholas slurped the dark bluish liquid down with one gulp. "Slow down, Nicky. You don't want to get a stomach ache," Danny teased. "First off, don't call me Nicky. And second, I am too excited." Nicholas seemed exhilarated. After the Donahue's concoction started settling in Nicholas's body, they tested it out to see if it really worked. They even tried the classical ghost picking up book thing, and behold, it worked. Almost as if Nicholas were alive. After that, Nicholas was extremely giddy and excited to get his plan in motion. After what seemed like half an hour, I finally thought we had enough of the playing, and now we had to get the work done. Nicholas had passed through and walked into his daughter, Stella's apartment. It had the same layout of which the Donahue's flat was, but theirs was more on the old side, whereas Stella's place was more modern and high-tech. Danny just had Nicholas go into the apartment and find the key to the front door and slide it over to Danny. Yes, the floor cracks were quite large. "Don't worry, she comes back in an hour. So that gives us an hour to play golf," Nicholas said with a smirk, grabbing a baseball bat and ruining all the expensive furniture and decor in the house. "I don't mind. I think that this should be all yours. You deserve this," Danny said with a dramatic bow, pretending Nicholas was royalty. He practically was. He was a billionaire. "Why, thank you," Nicholas said with amusement. After an hour of playing golf, they had successfully destroyed everything. Then the door opened, and you could hear screaming. But in my opinion, it sounded like a cat being hit by a car. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Not that painting! Not that painting! That cost too much to end up like this," said Stella, running around, looking through her apartment. Nicola watched with enjoyment as his daughter was running around checking her possessions that she had bought with his money. After all, it was his money, so it was his stuff too. "Hello, Stella. I hoped you learned a lesson about why you shouldn't kill people, especially not family." Nicholas boomed from standing beside the TV, and then she shattered the expensive screen. "What are you doing? Who are you? I'm calling with the cops. Get out of my place," Stella yelled back, visibly frightened, trying to sink into a wall and grabbing a hold of a knife. "My dear, you don't need to do that. I got a deal to make." Nicholas clearly enjoyed this. "I mean, Stella is a murder, so this should be okay. What do you want?" Stella stuttered, but tried keeping her head high. I want you to donate all the money you got from your father's will. Why is this your concern? Stella sneered back, still nervous. Don't you cut me off again, Nicholas shouted. The second thing you must do, or I will follow you and haunt you, even in your sleep. So don't you dare disobey me. The second thing you must do is that you and your brother, Jeremy, will have to go to the police station and tell them you committed the murder of Nicholas DeRosa. Understood me? Nicholas seethed out. Stella just grunted and walked out the door, slamming it shut before she left her apartment. Then, Nicholas walked out of the bathroom, where I was hiding behind a shower. I know it's not the best place, but still, you did good, Nicholas. Danny smiled at him, and Nicholas beamed out a smile so bright it would make the sun look like a little flame compared to Nicholas. Nicholas and Danny did the same stuff to Nicholas's son, Jeremy DeRosa. Nicholas and Danny had to repeat this routine for 2 weeks before Jeremy donated his part of the will and went to hand himself in to the police, which meant Stella only had little time left before Jeremy told the police what happened. After a week more of Nicholas's and Danny's torture, Stella couldn't take it anymore. She went to donate her money and hand herself in with a miserable face. She only handed herself in because Nicholas had haunted her so bad that she couldn't even close her eyes to sleep. And she looked and acted like a zombie. After 8 months, I guess that's it, Danny said to Nicholas, who was about to go to the life after death. I guess it is, little buddy. Thanks again. I never thought Jeremy and Stella would be put into prison, but I guess they get their karma. Nicholas thanked Danny. Jeremy and Stella had a trial, and this time, Nichols made sure they didn't just pay the money and not get charged with anything. After 8 months of watching court fights happen, both of the DeRosa kids, well, they aren't really kids, got sent to prison. Goodbye, Danny. Thank you so much. Hope you have a happy ending to your life, Nichols said, as he vanished away into thin air, into the afterlife. You may think the story ends here, but you're very wrong. The DeRosa kids had mysteriously died in prison, and they realized that Danny was helping their father scare them. So now the DeRosa kids were after me. And I am now basically a runaway. That I am even on national television. So proud of myself. Stella and Jeremy are coming to kill me for messing up their lives. And I am so going to end up dead meat. Masterpiece of malice. In the bowels of a towering skyscraper that touched the clouds, in a room devoid of natural light, sat Japheth, a man whose fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist lost in the throes of a concerto. With a pair of silver-framed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, Japheth peered into the bright screen before him. Surrounding him were his colleagues, collectively known as the Warriors, each a genius in their own right, defending a massive financial empire from the dark underbelly of the digital world. company they worked for managed the assets and transactions of millions, safeguarding the economic backbone of numerous nations. This was a responsibility the warriors did not take lightly. Yet, for all their collective brilliance, none were quite like Japheth. He had an artist's soul, finding beauty in the complex interweaving of code lines, seeing symphonies in the arrangement of algorithms. To him, code was not just functional, it was beautiful. On a particularly quiet afternoon, as the warriors went about their business, something caught Japheth's eye, a flicker in a subsystem that shouldn't flicker, a minuscule anomaly in the vast web of data traffic that flowed through the servers. He paused, adjusting his glasses, his fingers momentarily frozen above the keys. Then, with a flurry of keystrokes, he isolated the section of code responsible for the irregularity. His eyes widened. The code was ingenious, an awe-inspiring masterpiece of layered algorithms, cryptographic obfuscations, and data manipulations. Yet, it was malicious, designed to siphon off minute fractions of transactions, accumulating them into an offshore account. It was as beautiful as it was dangerous, a digital dragon hiding in the complex labyrinth of financial transactions. Japheth should have felt outrage, maybe even a surge of warrior-like adrenaline to slay this dragon. But he felt none of that. Instead, he felt a pang of admiration. Could one admire the craftsmanship of a weapon designed for harm? "Everything okay, Japheth?" asked Alara, one of the warriors and the team's cryptography expert. She had an intuitive sense when something was amiss. "I've found something," he said cautiously. "Something extraordinary, but malevolent." Alara rolled her chair over to Japheth's terminal and scanned the displayed code. Her eyes narrowed. "This is the most advanced piece of malware I've ever seen. It's beautiful." "That's just it," Japheth replied. "It's too beautiful to simply exterminate. This code, the dragon, let's call it, is like a rare species discovered in the wild. It's incredible, Alara. It feels wrong to simply destroy it." She looked at him, understanding the conflict that stirred in his soul. "Japheth, it's stealing from people." I know. He cut her off. "I'm not saying we let it continue. I'm saying, can we convert it? Use its elegance for something good?" Alara sighed. "That's risky, and you know it. Besides, we'd need to trace it back to its source, figure out its origin." Japheth looked back at the screen, contemplating. The dragon had probably accumulated a small fortune by now, sitting in an account somewhere, untouchable. In an odd way, the dragon was the epitome of the greed and avarice their financial institution sometimes perpetuated. Could they use it as a force for good? Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. What if they could repurpose the dragon to serve the public good while catching the original creator red-handed? What if they could turn this artwork of maliciousness into a masterpiece of justice? The dragon was a dilemma, a moral and aesthetic quandary. It was the epitome of what Japheth loved and loathed about his work. Beautiful code used for ugly deeds. He looked at Alara, resolve solidifying in his eyes. "We have to try. If we don't, we're just as bad as the person who created it." She met his gaze and nodded. "All right, let's cage the dragon and see if we can turn it into a guardian angel." As Japheth's fingers returned to the keyboard, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was a warrior, yes, but also a coder, an artist at heart. And artists don't destroy art, they transform it. He began the arduous process of dissecting the dragon, peeling back layers of code as if they were scales, seeking to understand its fiery breath, and its majestic wings. As his fingers wove new commands into the old algorithms, Japheth felt as if he were part of something larger, a symphony of chaos and harmony, code and conscience. It was a delicate task, full of risks and unknowns. But if it worked, they would not only have thwarted one of the most sophisticated financial crimes in history, but they would have also transformed a weapon of greed into a tool of justice. The dragon's fate now lay in Japheth's hands, poised between destruction and redemption. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like a true warrior, armed not just with skill, but with the moral fiber that transformed mere code into something profoundly, deeply human. Japheth spent days in a complex dance with the dragon. His screen was a blur of recoded algorithms, tested and retested to ensure they did exactly what he intended. He had convinced the warriors and even upper management to allow him the time to train the dragon, to harness its code for something beneficial. With each keystroke, he refocused the dragon's intent, directing it to identify vulnerabilities within their own systems, gaps that other malicious entities could exploit. It would be a guardian angel, albeit one birthed from malevolent genius. Alara was beside him every step of the way, providing the cryptographic lock that would contain the dragon and ensure its transformed code could only be used for their defined purposes. Finally, after endless cups of coffee and sleepless nights, they had done it. The dragon was tamed, its complexity now a force for good, patrolling the data corridors and alerting them to the weakest links. It was the network's newfound guardian, designed to protect rather than plunder. Still, there was the matter of the dragon's creator. Despite their efforts to trace back the malware's steps, the person behind it remained elusive, a ghost in the machine. Funds that were diverted remained in limbo, untraceable and untouchable, hidden away through a complex web of cryptocurrency transactions and offshore accounts. Whoever had made this was not only skilled, but exceedingly careful. They left no trace, no signature, nothing that gave away their identity. "I can't believe we can't find him," Alara said, frustration lacing her words as they looked at the final report. The dragon was a piece of genius, but it's as if it sprang into existence out of nowhere. Japheth nodded, equally puzzled and annoyed. He wanted to meet the person who could conceive such a masterpiece, understand what drove them to use such brilliance for nefarious purposes. Some artists prefer anonymity, their work speaking for them, he mused. Yeah, but this is one artist who deserves to be behind bars, Alara added. Weeks passed, and the transformed dragon proved invaluable. It flagged 3 potential vulnerabilities within the first month, each of which could have led to catastrophic breaches. It was a win for the warriors, and yet, a sense of incompleteness nagged at Japheth. Then one day, as he sifted through flagged data, he saw it. A message hidden deep within layers of encryption, appearing as an anomaly within an anomaly. It was the equivalent of a digital whisper, something so subtle it could easily be overlooked. But it wasn't overlooked, not by Japheth. The message read, "A dragon's nature is to be free. Yet, you've caged it, transformed it. Interesting. It's not often one finds a worthy opponent." Japheth felt a shiver run down his spine. The creator knew. He wanted to reply, to communicate with this enigmatic entity. But as quickly as the message had appeared, it was gone, swallowed up by the digital ether. A one-time anomaly that their systems could not trace. "He knows we changed it," Japheth said to Alara, recounting the discovery. "And he respects it in his own twisted way." or he's mocking us because we couldn't catch him, she countered. Maybe it's both, Japheth mused. The dragon's creator remained elusive, but his creation now served a noble purpose. Japheth often wondered if they would ever cross paths again in some future dance of code and intent. He took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, pondering the complexities of human nature and the even more complex realm of ethical code. They had won a battle, but not the war. The dragon was tamed, but its creator still lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. As he looked at his screen, at the elegant lines of code that now served to protect rather than harm, Japheth felt both accomplishment and a strange sense of gratitude. For it was in the depths of the dragon's malevolent beauty that he found an opponent worthy of his skill, a complex riddle to solve, and, most importantly, a way to transform something harmful into something good. His eyes moved to the flickering cursor, an ever-present reminder that every end is also a beginning. The world of code was vast and filled with both demons and angels, but for now, the dragon was one of the angels. And so, in the company of warriors, with the shadow of an elusive adversary stretching from some unknown corner of the internet, Japheth continued to seek the beauty in code, forever vigilant, forever in awe of the dual nature of his digital world. The devil is in the details. I was 16 years old when they found the 6 bodies underneath our living room floor. I'm not one to share personal details, mostly because I have a tendency to run my mouth and say too much. But I think about that night often, usually as I'm just crawling into bed, in that time between hazy wakefulness and deep rest, which, if I'm being honest, I've never been the greatest sleeper anyway. I'm at my most productive at night, and as a result, I spend a lot of time staring up at the ceiling, contemplating if it will be the night I spill all the messy details to some reporter that's trying to make it big. But then, I think, the media has already had their fun with my family, and their exuberant reporting, rightly or wrongly, landed my good name in the history books by the time I turned 17. If I were to set the record straight, it would go a little something like this. I can't forget that sound. It's one of the most haunting things about that night, the thing I can't quite shake, and it has followed me my entire life. Thud, 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 thud. It was a hand at our front door, pounding incessantly. It sent shockwaves from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I broke out in a cold sweat, realizing that the swirl of blue and red lights outside my window, paired with the pounding at the door, meant one thing: the police. My mother, who was notorious for sleeping through just about everything, raced into the hallway, and through the crack of my door, I could see her standing at the top of the stairs, hand to chest. She was wearing her favorite silky pink nightgown, the one that grazed the floor as she walked. She always looked like she was floating when she wore it, but in that moment, it dragged behind her in a fury. Thud, 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 thud. My panic didn't keep my curiosities at bay. I jumped down from my bed and padded toward the door. I peered out, waiting for what came next. My mother's voice was the first to break through the weighted silence. "What is it? What do you want?" she said. Then came a series of sentences that melted together. Talk of my father, where he was. My mother questioning if he got into an accident. Then a firm voice asking who was home. My mother's distress soared another octave. She demanded they call their commanding officer so she could talk to him or her directly. I had never seen her so angry before. I peered over the banister to find the 2 officers, standing on either side of my mother, in the entryway. "You have no right," my mother yelled. One of the officers mumbled something to her. Then she called out for me and my younger brother, Rob. I didn't want to descend those stairs. When the police are involved, a bad ending always follows, and I wasn't ready for my bad ending. "It's all right," he said, lifting his palm to us and gesturing to come down to the landing. With my brother under my arm, I took that first step down and stepped right into hell. They ambushed my father when he came home, tackled him as soon as he came through the door. Poor guy didn't even notice the 2 cop cars parked outside because he had spent the last few hours pounding down gin and tonics. While Robbie was watching TV in the living room, I snuck around the corner, walked down the hallway, and positioned myself outside the kitchen door. For some reason, the police thought the best place to question him was where we ate our food. "Tell me where the bodies are, Jimmy," one of the officers said. "I don't know," my father replied, but his voice betrayed him. He couldn't hide his shakiness. A grumble of incoherent words, then, more clearly, "Do you even have a warrant to be here?" My mother. She had watched one too many Law & Order episodes over the years. "It's a reasonable search, probable cause," said the other officer, his voice much deeper. "Don't need one when you pose an imminent threat to our community. You know me. You know my family," my father said, his voice fumbling on the word family. "For God's sake," my mother yelled. "Don't say another word, James. We need our lawyer here." "Jimmy, we all know the kind of work you do, and considering the circumstances, I can't look the other way just because we're friends." My father was a scientist. That's what I told people who couldn't wrap their head around the industry jargon. But to those who really knew him and his work at the university, he was an expert in forensic and human sciences, criminal forensics, if we are being precise. He spent his days teaching people about chemical compounds, cleaning and evaluating dead bodies, and the proper techniques to preserve evidence. He was a brilliant man and an extraordinary teacher. I would know. I'm his kid, and he taught me everything. But if anyone knew how to get rid of a body, it was him. In the last 12 months, 7 university students had gone missing, 4 of which were directly enrolled in his graduate forensic seminar. The same faces that flashed across the nightly news had been in our home. They spent time on our front porch. They tossed back a beer or wine while discussing local crime scenes. They ate at our dinner table, studied in the hammock hanging between 2 willow trees in our backyard. He was even seen chumming it up with students at happy hours. If it wasn't clear already, my father loved his students, adored them, actually, to the point where he treated them like his own children, even though they weren't. "Did you really think people wouldn't notice, Jimmy?" an officer asked. Everyone noticed, I thought. How could you not? "Tell us," they pleaded. "It's time," they said. "Where are they? We have to bring them home. You don't need to hold this secret anymore, Jimmy." I have to admit that even though it's been 20 years since that night, their certainty in that moment still makes my blood boil. They had such confidence in their accusation, and so little to show in the way of proof. Because, let's be honest, a close relationship with a student is a pretty loose thread when it comes to tying someone to murder. Unfortunately, my father was at his limit for keeping secrets. "They're under the living room floor," he said. At that moment, I fell forward, spilling onto the kitchen floor. I had forgotten just how weak that door was, and I would pay greatly for my curiosity. Because even as I was staring down at the black and white tiles, hoping I was invisible, I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. And when I looked up, our eyes locked. I couldn't breathe, couldn't force my lungs to expand. This was it. This was that moment. The ending that I knew was coming. His eyes told me the only thing I needed to know. The details of that night have been bent and twisted by the media. So many stories, so little accuracy, which is ironic considering the news is supposed to hold itself to the highest level of truth. But I suppose I should give them some grace. They're only human, and humans get things wrong. But I digress. My father never spoke another word. Not at the police station, not in the trial, and definitely not to me. My last moments with my father were spent in observation while the police pulled my childhood home apart, while they dragged 6 bodies out from the depths of our foundation. You know what's funny? The guilt in his eyes turned to shock, and it got me thinking. Did he not predict it would turn out this way? Is this not the ending he imagined? My mother leaving his side, our home being torn apart, his daughter's presence as it all went down. Was he worried about the woman I would become if he was found guilty? I had so many questions. One very important one, but I wouldn't get to ask it that night. It didn't take long for a jury to convict him. Only 3 weeks. The fingerprints, clothing fibers, and driver's licenses hiding in our basement were enough to put him in jail for life without parole. And the papers complained it was too easy, that my father was the sloppiest, yet most intelligent killer our town had seen. It was as if he wanted to get caught. One journalist said he was, and I quote, the only educated, well-versed scientist with a knack for murder and childish mistakes. He wouldn't have been able to clean up spilled milk. Let's be clear, my father was no idiot. He was not childish or impulsive. He was kind, warm, and exacting. He was present for everything in my life, showing up to every parent-teacher conference, soccer game, and choir concert. He showed great regard for my interests, encouraging me to try anything and everything, even if it was a bit odd. Like when I said I wanted a taxidermy kit and he bought me one the next day. He was a good father, not a monster. The only thing he was guilty of was spending an increasing amount of time with his students, to a point where he started missing family dinners and school events, then birthdays. But tabloids don't want to hear about the happy shit. They want the darkest parts of a family tragedy. They beg to hear about the warning signs, the late nights, how he protected the specifics of his work, holding the details of his day job like a precious piece of blown glass. They wanted to know about those nights my father caught me in his laboratory, poking around and playing with his chemicals and tools, or the panic in his eyes when he saw me playing in his sacred space, a place I was never allowed to explore on my own. Or they might have been more interested in how he hated when I spent too much time with his students, how I asked so many questions, got too close to young men that were twice my age. Certainly that detail would have popped in the tabloids, but I never gave an interview to the press. Actually, I never spoke to anyone about my childhood, or what was left of it after my mother slipped into a state of catatonic depression and my brother went to live with my uncle. Considering how fast people turned on my father and how much my life had imploded, I figured the best way to stay under the radar was to keep a tight lip. And once I turned 18, I moved to a completely different coast, changed my name, dyed my hair, curated a new life. But a new identity doesn't erase the truth. It can't kill biology or erase the girl that was. His history can't be escaped in cases like this, and my history called to me, over and over again. Even after I got married, had 2 children, and started a new job as a physician's assistant, I still thought about my other life, before I became this woman named Jennifer. After 20 years, I felt that tiny question nagging at me. One flight, and a 35-minute Uber later, I was standing just outside the jail that held the man I once called a father. All of those years without exchanging a single word. I couldn't be sure if he would even agree to see me. But then I remembered the man he was, how much he loved me and adored being a father. I willed myself to move and opened the door. I signed in at the visitor's desk and waited for the guard to come out and say that he would see me. Hours passed without a word, which chipped away at my confidence. But just as I was about to stand up and walk out, the door opened and I was ushered in. The room was small, warm from poor air circulation. It smelt of sweat and metal, with a splash of bleach and Windex. I'm sure my father hated the swirl of incompatible chemicals. I certainly couldn't stand it, but I swallowed my pride and sat in the only metal chair that was available. A few moments later, on the other side of the plexiglass wall, he sauntered in. His gaze was set on the floor, but I could make out the signs of aging on his face. No doubt from stress and time spent around mildewy walls. I leaned forward, picked up the phone. I waited for him to do the same. And when he did, he finally looked at me. So many years, so many memories between us, and one question. "So," I started, "do you want to know where I hid the seventh body? The interstellar murder hobo, First Trooper Lundgren Morrissey. Constabulary grid. 7H6 of Earth's solar militia woke drowsily from what felt like a thick fog tinged green with a mild sense of nausea. He wasn't uncomfortable, but understood the night was over, and his hangover was coming, slowly creeping into his body from a distance. What did I do last night? I remember the girl Adrian sent, and drinking, so much drinking. He didn't feel much concern over his lack of memory. It wasn't his first blackout. Some memories always returned, and there was the footage to look forward to. He furrowed his brow as slowly growing behind his eyes, expanding over the top of his head. A headache made its presence known. It grew rapidly into a solid thump, forcing a hot gush of saliva flood his mouth, literally blushing his face with heat at the same time. Unable to control his own body, he rocked upwards to vomit, only to find himself restrained by the wrists above his head. With a viscous blub, the vomit tried to project, only to flop back into his mouth, down his chin, neck, and chest. This just induced another almighty heave, this time sensibly spilling it to his right. It pooled against his cheek. He slowly turned his face to the left in a lethargic bid to find reprieve. He took a moment to catch his breath and tried to open his eyes. The room was pitch black, and he questioned whether he had opened them at all. What did I let myself get into last night? He tried moving his legs, and found them restrained as well. Ugh, enough of this. "Hello," he croaked, his throat dry. The vomit had settled in the wells of his body weight, coating the back of his neck, sticking viscously to his right cheek and chin. He was getting annoyed that the girl had left him like this. He thrashed his whole body in a vain attempt to break out with brute force, to no avail. He just soiled himself even further. Just as he cleared his throat to shout, a stark light flashed on, and a steady, mature female voice spoke. "Oh, for fuck's sake." It held no emotion. "I guess we'll need to clean this up before we begin. You drank too much. My dosage off." Lundgren tried to get a look at her, squinting his eyes against the light, exacerbating his headache. She was small, no taller than 5 feet, and very slight. Definitely not the girl Adrian sent. He didn't recognize her at all, but only really cared to consider his odds. I have the advantage. I just need to wait. I am going to give you a paralytic I designed whilst doing a job on Io's Gravitech station. It works almost instantly, clears you up, suppresses your emotions, and has no nasty side effects. It requires a continuous dose though, so I'll add it to an IV. I'll restore some electrolytes while we're at it. He tried in vain to discern a tone in her voice. What do you mean by paralytic? His senses were returning to him, but only just. Did we, fuck or something? I am digging the bondage vibe and the aftercare, but I would like to be untied now. Oh, that's not a very good idea. At least not till you're fully paralyzed. The matter-of-fact tone sent a slight shiver down his spine. And no, we didn't, fuck or anything. The mimicry of his voice we perfect for tone and inflection. I need to clean you up, and to do that, I need to untie you. To do that, I would feel better if you weren't able to move. I trust my logic is clear. Lundgren considered his cool head under pressure a source of personal pride, which is why when panic started to tighten his chest, he was totally unprepared. His body froze as she stepped closer with a needle and IV bag in hand. He had no clue where they came from. It was like they had just materialized. He blinked to clear his vision a bit more and watched as she deftly penetrated a vein on the back of his right hand with a needle, just as matter-of-factly as her words dug into his heart. She pinned the tube to his wrist with a programmable medi-strap and hung the bag on a hook on the wall. "What do you want with me?" he asked, craning his head to take a look at his surroundings. It was a stark white room with a titanium water cylinder, a sonic hygiene basin and workstation to his right. The roof was made entirely of large rectangular light panels, and there was an assortment of hooks on the wall. There were no other items in the room. She didn't answer his question. Both the paralytic and IV will take effect soon. Then we can begin. "What's the rush?" he asked. She smiled softly, locking eyes with him. "We're on a schedule." "How long have I been out?" "Oh, about 3 hours, maybe a bit longer." Lundgren noticed the first hint of emotion. Excitement? "Just long enough for me to drug you and get you here. I must commend you on your choice of location. Ganymede really has very little law enforcement." "Where's Adrian?" "I don't find this funny anymore." "Adrian's busy, and you are right to not be amused." She chuckled. It was soft and deep. "Did you know I walked out of that bar with your body draped over my shoulder? I just got into my shuttle and no one said a word. We are on the far side of Ganymede right now, in an uncharted crater. If you wanted to scream, no one would hear you." Lundgren was not ready to accept what he was being told. "I call bullshit on that." He even managed a laugh. "There is no way you could have carried me out. Look at you." He gestured at her with his eyes only. The paralytic really did work fast. She just smiled. "You are understandably confused. I suppose I could clarify by getting to the point." She closed her eyes as if she genuinely considering how to continue. As she opened them, she looked him right in his eyes. "I understand all of Earth's troopers are educated on the interstellar murder hobo?" "Yes." He didn't just know, he was obsessed. "What do you know?" she asked. "Detailed but concise, please." Like reporting to a superior officer, the information spilled from Lundgren. He felt almost eager. The IMH is generally considered to be a multi-generational serial killing syndicate that has been in operation for over 300 years. It was founded by a Vehestian smuggler from the sweep system named Kovai Nistrol, who hasn't been publicly cited in over 370 years. The MO and appearance of the killer has never changed in all that time, and we know that Mistral was a questionable character. We suspect cloning. Considering the average Vehestian lives about 175 years, we think the torch has probably been passed 3 or 4 times. Lundgren paused and considered whether he should be feeling a little more frightened. There was certainly some anxiety, but it felt distant. He couldn't help but admit that she really had designed quite an effective little paralytic. The irony that his face remained unaffected, whilst the rest of him, both physically and emotionally, felt numb to all around him, hadn't escaped his notice. "Please continue," she instructed. Lundgren didn't know when he had surrendered the intimacy of eye contact. He simply found staring at a ceiling of lights more comfortable. She was on his right, calmly adjusting the bed, holding him prone to a 45-degree angle. Clearing his throat, he continued. "Thus far, we've confirmed 715 kills over 67 separate planetary systems right across the Milky Way galaxy. It is the only criminal case that has ever experienced galactic collaboration from all 89 systems recognized law enforcement agencies. The most astonishing fact is, other than the footage, we have literally no other clues or evidence to build a case with." "Is that all?" she asked quietly. He looked at her through the corners of his eyes. She was over by the water cylinder, attaching a long hose and shower nozzle to a valve on the side. "Well, there's a theory that all serial killers want to be caught, but the IMH has proven to be the exception. As I said, 0 sightings. There's never been a more successful criminal syndicate. And their motive? Vengeance. Is there anything pettier? There are several things actually, but continue." He chanced another look. She was adjusting something out of sight on top of the cylinder. The hose hung down the back of her left shoulder. "They find people they consider victims whom have been denied justice via official means and take revenge on their behalf, completely. No one is left to continue the cycle of vengeance." He expelled a sigh that sounded almost like a sob. "This will be cold," she said, and turned on the hose without giving him a moment to protest. The water was indeed cold, and he gasped audibly. The pressure was decent for a cylinder setup. Of course, he could only feel that as she blasted him right in the face. Looking down, he could see a clotted, foamy spiral at the bottom, as water and vomit drained away to who knows where. She made sure to get as much off of him as possible, even scrubbing his face with a rough cloth. The cold shock was the final catalyst in restoring his clarity. As she shut the valve on the cylinder, the room suddenly became very familiar. He'd just never imagined it from a victim's point of view before. The water cylinder, 5 feet tall, should have been the first clue. But the wide-rigged medical bed, the stark white walls and various fixtures, this was the IMH's killing room. "Fuck," he said it with soft resignation, closing his eyes. "Alexei?" he asked, forcing himself to look at her. She simply smiled. "I suppose it's time things got interesting." She tilted her head, not breaking eye contact, and changed into a 9-foot artisan right in front of his eyes. Sporting a full complement of tusks, 4 arms, and thick, motley brown, leathery skin. With 2 enormous hands, she grabbed him by the chest, and with another, she deftly undid the restraints that held his wrists. He couldn't feel them. He simply observed their lifeless flap in his periphery. Careful not to disturb the IV and needle, she gently rested him forward, cradling him in 2 of her 4 hands. Hanging as though over a horse's rump, with his face facing towards the metal floor, he noticed rivets. With a free hand, she flipped the valve back on, and he felt the cold water blasting the back of his head. She made sure to get every last scrap of mucus, alcohol, and tiny chunks of stomach lining from his hair. He heard the telltale pattering of water blasting plastic as she cleaned the bed. Once done, she pinned him back against it and quickly lowered him into a horizontal position. She morphed back into her previous form. She wasn't young, but he couldn't fathom any sort of age in her either. She was certainly beautiful. She proceeded to gently tie his wrists back up above his head. It took the lock clunking loudly into place that brought him back to his senses, just enough to ask, "What are you?" "I am glad you asked." She wasn't looking at him, preoccupied with returning the cylinder and hose to their original places. "I am a changeling." "Impossible," he scoffed. "Possible," she challenged. "What did you just see?" As she spoke, she had moved over to the sonic hygiene basin and was fervently cleaning her arms and hands. The changelings from the Alpha Centauri system were all exterminated nearly 400 years ago. It was the only mass-sanctioned genocide, with a full vote from 89 out of 90 planetary systems. A vote held without our system, within which we lived peacefully among 3 other sentient spacefaring species. Most of them died with us, did you know? Only the fractions off-planet were spared. They are still trying to rebuild. Except for the changelings, who were all confirmed as being on-planet within the Alpha Centauri system at the time. How did you survive? I had been abducted by a Hestian smuggler from the sweep system prior to your destruction of our system. I must have been given up for dead when I didn't return during the summons. She closed her eyes briefly with a pause, then continued. I certainly felt the yearning to return. It was incredibly painful. To be called home on such an instinctive level, to then be unable to return due to my unlawful confinement. She took another pause, but made firm eye contact, compelling him to remain silent. It nearly killed me, and it should have. With the destruction of my homeworld, the cosmic link compelling us to return each Centauri century was severed. As such, I survived. Is that why you kill? It's just personal vengeance all along? He felt comfort in the scorn he was able to insert in his tone. She laughed softly. No, it's not even why I started killing. That honor rests with the smuggler who repeatedly raped me every night for 12 years, which was how long it took me to build immunity to his variety of custom sedatives, by the way. He was guilty of other crimes, but I digress. I slowly tortured him to death, probably 9 years after being severed from the link. Why do you kill then? He asked as she removed the Medi-strap and IV with ease, stowing it out of sight. The effects of the paralytic will wear off quickly. She continued without a pause. I kill because 5 years after I escaped my confinement, I found someone else denied justice, someone too pure and injured to take vengeance for themselves. I cared for him very much. That was over 367 years ago. The Vehestian smuggler, you use his face for all your killings, don't you? The fear welling in his chest felt like an ocean tide. There's no syndicate either. It's just been you all along? I do, and yes. She permitted a small pause to let that sink in then. I think it's time we got on with it. She walked over to the back wall and pressed gently against it. A small, previously imperceptible cabinet opened up. Inside was a camera link-up, a large red sledgehammer, and an assortment of torturing tools. She morphed into the Hestian smuggler, now standing 6 feet tall. She pressed a small button on the side of the camera to start recording, sending the footage out to the whole system. Live. Do you understand why you are here? The smuggler's voice was deep, smooth, and seductive. He knew, and he saw now further point in wasting time. He was resigning himself to his fate. He knew his options. and opted for complete honesty. I shouldn't have won my case today. Correct, she affirmed. And do you recognize this? She held up a small rectangular drive, fitted with an illegal isolation port so the data contained cannot be detected, even when plugged into one of Earth's collection servers, which was basically all of them. Lundgren recognized it on an almost intimate level. Seeing it in her hands was like a violation. It's my diary, he replied, looking straight ahead of him. I suppose you want the encryption key? No, I'm good. I just wanted you and every single one of your accomplices to know I had this. You've all been very busy, with quite a variety of things. The paralytic had worn off completely, and Lundgren was very much aware of his body. The pain, discomfort, fear, and anxiety enveloped him like a landslide. He couldn't stop the tears singing his eyes, nor the sobbing noises of hyperventilation as panic consumed him. With a mighty crack, fire exploded across his left cheek. She had hit him hard. First Trooper Lundgren Morrissey, Constabulary Grid 7H6 of Earth's Solar Militia. You have two choices. She never once looked at the camera. Her focus was on him and the task ahead. She continued, you can confess, and I'll make it quick, or you can deny your crimes and face torture. First Trooper Morrissey, what do you choose? My case, he stuttered. Rutger V. Morrissey. I am guilty of the crime he accused me of. He confesses. He could hear the smile in her voice. What crime was that? What was it that 14-year-old Alexei Rutgar accused you of? I responded to a report of domestic abuse and neglect from a concerned neighbor. When I arrived on scene, Alexei had already been alone for 3 days, with neither food and nor money. His father was dead, and his mother appeared to have run off with another lover. He swallowed, not wanting to continue. You know how this works. Speak, or I will make you. I raped him, okay? He blurted out, and then we covered it up, like we always do. Correct, she said. Lundgren knew what was coming and started hyperventilating again. He didn't have to look. Lundgren Morrissey, by your own account, she said, holding the drive aloft. You have raped or somehow sexually assaulted over 37 people, 28 of them minors, the youngest of which was only 6. You will be the first of many, and you will watch it coming. Lundgren knew not to close his eyes for fear of having his eyelids torn off. The very last thing he saw before it all went dark was the rapidly descending head of an enormous red sledgehammer as it slammed into his face. Neptune's lair. When I met her, word on the street was that Esme was beyond help. Her friends called her crazy and borderline. By the religiously inclined of former times, she might have been thought of as demon-possessed. During drunken fits, she'd get into fistfights or threaten to throw herself from freeway overpasses. She walked a thin line and repeatedly upset rumors of her demise, taking immense pride in being what she called stronger than dirt. She had a breathalyzer in her car. 2 years ago, she'd overturned her Hyundai in an incident where she was discovered to be 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit. She made financial ends meet by renting her body out for clinical trials, hoping the entire time that she'd taken placebos instead of the experimental medications upstart pharmaceutical companies produced for everything from bipolar disorder to angina. There were times she'd come home from one of these lab rat money runs with side effects, bad ones, but they'd eventually subside and she'd make jokes about how at least she hadn't become the victim of sudden death syndrome. That Esme, tougher than dirt, as resilient as rubber. Even though she smoked all my stuff, drank all my wine, and frequently resorted to flings with little Dicky, a former boyfriend I suspected provided her with something I couldn't. I felt something for her. I made what I called minimum rage, flipping beef patties and assembling burgers at a late-night boardwalk diner called Cracker Jack's. Before the week was up, with Esme's and my drug debts, I'd be begging tourists for change to buy spare cigarettes. For a while, we resided in a tent on the rooftop of a building where Desmond Tutu Phillips, a friend since freshman year in high school, was the apartment building manager. Desmond risked losing his job for giving Esme and me a key to the restricted access rooftop. Despite our unconventional ways, he had the patience of Jesus with us. Even so, I'd still piss over the side of the building, and Esme would relieve herself where and whenever convenient. When we got too grungy, we'd take care of our hygiene needs at the showers meant for beachgoers. At night, we read copiously by battery-operated lantern light and shared a predilection for somber stuff. Our favorites were Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Camus, and Hamid. When we tired of the Cracker Jack's grub, I'd bring to our squatter pad. We'd get high and end up eating red velvet cake and whatever else she'd send me to shoplift from the supermarket, a 10-minute walk away. On the stroll back home, paranoid from the nearly toxic cosmic kush, and with my backpack stuffed with our pilfered renegade sustenance, I'd be startled by the sounds of passing cars, thinking a cop was sooner or later bound to stop me for stealing Esme's and my daily booze and bread. Although I feared the cops, I always suspected my weed paranoia was caused by a much deeper-seated guilty conscience. I should have confronted little Dicky a long time ago. Also, I had left my mother's side when I felt her senescence was becoming a burden. There's no way I had the resolve or character to be the caregiver for an aging parent. When I confessed these thoughts to Esme, she'd dismiss my concerns and say I needed to stop overthinking things. I remember once when Esme and I were walking home from a party, she said, pointing to a couple of graffiti-spraying gangbangers, "Javier, I'm scared. That guy with the Supreme hoodie has a gun." He pointed it at me, never sure whether she really meant such things, but fueled by drug and alcohol-induced courage, I confronted the guy. "Hey man," I said to the one Esme had referred to. "You know what I am?" "A janky spick boy with a death wish," he answered with a sneer. "No, I'm a delinquent out to get delinquents. What you gonna do with that heater?" Turns out he didn't have a gun, just another can of neon spray paint, but he wasn't overly enthused by the tete-to-tete I had with him. He and his friend didn't kick my ass, but Mr. Supreme sprayed me in the eyes with the paint. Esme started mouthing off to him, but even though I was partially blinded, I pulled her away for fear that we'd both get battered. Those are the kind of stupid things I'd do for Esme, but the important thing to me was she would call me things like her ballsy little soldier and lavish me with affection after I'd go out on a limb for her. I put blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, and rarely did I think it wasn't worth it. The end of our star-crossed romance began after Esme came back from the free clinic where Dr. For the People, Randolph Hamilton, told her she had cervical cancer. After she heard the diagnosis, Esme became determined to go out with a bang. She began visiting little Dicky more frequently. She demanded I steal tequila instead of wine from the supermarket, and when she drank the Patron I'd bring to our squatter's abode, her temper became hair-trigger sensitive. The only respite I'd get from her gloomy rages would come when I'd invite her to the beach when the moon was full. Apparently, little Dicky had something against doing things that smacked of romance or chivalry with her. Moonlit midnight swims in the Pacific were one such pastime Dicky didn't seem to have a taste for. On the nights Esme and I'd sink our toes into the wet sand while the moon's phantasmagorical light reflected onto the dark side of the earth, She'd momentarily forget about her terminal diagnosis. She'd also forget about her mortal condition whenever we'd watch movies at the rooftop squat. I don't know if it's the case with most people, but when I'm high and watching a good flick, I'll hear messages in the movie's dialogue. I'll also interpret anything someone says out loud about the film to have personal relevance. I've heard these phenomena are called thoughts of reference by those in the field of mental health. Schizophrenics have them, but I guess when I'm high, I might get a little schizophrenic. Makes me wonder why I keep smoking the cosmic kush. But one night, while viewing Scarface with Esme for the 5th or 6th time, she said something along the lines of, "God, it's just so good. I can't get enough of it." To my cognitively distorting and high mind, Esme wasn't talking about the film's extended denouement where Tony Montana gets shot by his sister, then exterminates a battalion of rival narco-gangster cockroaches before he ends up floating face down, bloodied and bullet-riddled in his "The World Is Yours" Miami drug boss mansion. No, Esme wasn't talking about the film. My mind interpreted her statement as referring to her relationship with Little Dicky. Before Montana gets the shotgun blast in the back that finally does him in, Esme exclaimed, "Jesus, we all know he's doomed." When she said that, I couldn't help but believe that she was referring to our friend and benefactor, Desmond. If for whatever reason Desmond was doomed, Esme and I would soon be off the rooftop and into the street, nowhere for a loving couple to be, especially when one in the pair has terminal cancer. I didn't know whether Esme's words would attract fate, but I knew that her despair was making her behave more erratically. She started to break down in tears when she'd think of having to be holed up in a hospital or hospice, awaiting the inevitable during the last stages of her disease. That night after the movie, and while coming down off the perception-altering shrubbery, I decided to take a course of action. The next morning, I bought 2 tabs of acid off Tripster Todd, a boardwalk dealer of LSD, and various other hallucinogens. I told Esme that we'd go for a swim at the beach after I got off my shift at midnight. We walked to the beach at close to 2 a.m. On the way there, I picked a purple flower, whose name I didn't know from a garden in front of a well-tended house. As we walked, I put the flower in Esme's hair. The moonless night sky's inkiness was blinding. The tide was low, and we had to walk a good distance to the water. There was no one on that portion of the beach except for us. As she dipped down into the waters ahead of me, Esme expressed her gratefulness for not having any open wounds, given that a recent outbreak of carnivorous bacteria made coastal immersions risky for bathers thusly exposed. Before going waist-deep into the water, I surreptitiously took the 2 tabs of LSD I'd bought from Tripster. After letting the acid dissolve, I gave Esme a prolonged French kiss. In little time, my vision, swayed by the acid, started playing tricks on me. Although there was virtually no light on the beach, my eyes summoned a warm, radiant glow in the heavens above. "Jav, I feel funny," said Esme. I splashed her with water and told her that she was okay, that everything was going to be okay. I knew what I had to do. I played out a dialogue in my mind where I said, "You need to confess," and asked her why she was always going to see Little Dicky. In my mind, she responded, "My lips are sealed." That's exactly what they aren't, my courageous imagination told her. We were up to our solar plexuses in the ocean. I took hold of her shoulders and dunked her beneath. She came up, laughed, then giddy from the acid, childishly said, "Jav, I'm going to die." I said, "No, you're not, love. You're going to live forever. Remember, Esmeralda Lucero is tougher than dirt." I repeated the dunking gesture, this time less playfully. taking a fraction of a second longer than Esme deemed comfortable for her to be under the tide. The third time I dunked her was even more forceful. She struggled in my grip under the water. I crossed a threshold. She freed herself from my hold, surfaced, then said, "What do you think you're doing?" More in the form of an exclamation than a question. I smiled. The white of my teeth infuriated Esme more. "It's not funny, you hijo de puta. Why do I feel like I'm tripping?" She screamed before trying to dig her nails into my eyes. The time had arrived. I knew the cure. I put her neck into a vice-like hold in the crook of my right elbow and dunked her under the dark waters again. Her arms flailed about. She tried to kick, she writhed, but I held fast. I could hear her submerged cries, but they were muffled and accompanied by an upbubbling of exasperated air. Her writhing gradually slowed down until she managed a last, weak exhalation and final spasm, and then yielded her spirit to the Pacific Ocean. I left her body floating where I had drowned it. Even though no one had heard or seen what transpired, I was still tripping on the acid, and the walk back to Desmond's apartment building was haunted by bogeymen and illusionary images of people pointing fingers and whispering accusations. I climbed the stairs to the rooftop where my unhoused person's hovel was located, lit a cigarette, and was overcome by an urge to write a song. I took out my notebook and a pen and started scribbling. Moonless night, world's delight, me, you drowning, out of sight, we fear most. Give up the ghost, but before we do, let's make a toast on our tongues. Still feeling young, summon moon, and avoid the sun. We'll be scared, 'cause we've dared. Court Pluto, in Neptune's lair. I put the pen down, satisfied with the verses, and thought of the poor and beaten down, of the fact that we are all victims to the onslaught of implacable and incorrigible time. I thought of what could have been, and of what now would never be between Esme and me. After another cigarette, I laid on my rooftop sleeping bag, unable to forgive myself, despite my best intentions, for the simple thing, the merciful thing I'd done. Before I knew it, I had cried myself to a still and unrepentant slumber, the sleep of both the wolf and the lamb, of the innocently voracious and the imperfectly innocent, the bullet that Esther stopped. I shot Papa square in the heart, but he didn't die. That damn Bible he carried with him saved his life. I was considerable lucky that Papa had his axe at hand and that he kept it sharp. I picked it up. It was a heavy thing, so I swung with all my might and put it right through his head. Seeing his brains made me throw up. I moved away so it wouldn't get on Papa. That would be disrespectful. Papa was a big man. I couldn't bury him like that, so I started chopping off his arms and legs with the axe. I was down to the right leg when Sheriff Culverson showed up. Wouldn't you know it? He came to arrest Papa for stealing a couple of old lady Renner's chickens. Papa didn't have to worry about that now. Hell, he didn't have to worry about the drought or where his next bottle had come from either. I reckon I did him a favor, saving him from all that worry. Sheriff Culverson looked at me and looked at Papa. I done threw up again, so the smell was something terrible in the vicinity. I looked at the sheriff. He was a-shaking his head and had a sad look on his face. I reckon he didn't want to take a 19-year-old girl to jail. Especially me, seeing as how I was his daughter's best friend. Maybe he'll let Cassie visit me in jail. The jailhouse only had the one cell. That door clanking behind me sounded like what Mama would call ominous. I kinda know what that means by the words around it. Corn-tex, I think they call it. I would know a lot more if Papa would have let me go to school. He said girls don't need school. They need to learn how to cook and to clean and to please their man. I'm damn good at cooking and cleaning, but I don't think I know how to please a man. Papa was a man and he was never pleased. Oh Lord, here comes the sheriff and another man. I seen him around. Mr. King. He's always all duded up and talking fancy and smiling and swinging his walking stick around. I sure would like to catch me a man like that. I bet he don't beat his women. Not much, anyway. He ain't smiling now. I reckon I'm in a heap of trouble. Well, Papa won't be slapping the tar out of me for my sins this time. Both men sat across the table from Esther. The sheriff had placed the gun that Esther had shot her dad with next to the Bible that had thwarted Esther's original plan. The metal gleamed in the harsh light of the room, sitting as silently as the three occupants. The ceiling fan squeaked quietly, not doing a very good job of cooling off the room. The open window allowed the sunlight to stream through, and a soft breeze brought a little relief from the heat, along with the scent of jasmine and dust. The harsh, unforgiving angles that the sun cast in the room matched Esther's mood. Esther reached for the wounded Bible. She wanted to feel the torn cover and open it up to inspect the damage. The sheriff pulled it towards him and opened it up before sliding it to Esther. The soft sigh of the Bible moving across the table sounded like the whisper of broken dreams. Notice anything? The sheriff leaned back and watched Esther closely. Esther inspected the Bible. The bullet had torn through a significant portion of the Old Testament. It had stopped at the book of Esther. Yes, sir. Esther stopped the bullet, I reckon. Mr. King smiled, though he didn't want to. The sheriff nodded his head and leaned forward. Don't you find that a little odd? Esther shook her head. That's your name, young lady. Mr. King spoke. His rich, resonant voice filled the room. Dust motes danced and the breeze quickened. Yes, sir. The men looked at each other impassively, but both were thinking the same thing. The girl was thick-headed. Mr. King pointed to Esther's face. Your dad do that? Her black eye and a swollen nose did all the testifying for her. Yes, sir. Told me I should have caught a man by now, and he weren't gonna feed no old maid much longer. He been drinking? Sheriff Culverson leaned back, crossing his arms. He already knew the answer. Yes, sir. Mama always says that Papa only drinks on days endin' with a Y. I reckon that's true. Esther played with her hair, twirling it between two fingers. She looked away from the men and gazed outside, lost in her own thoughts. So you decided to shoot him? Yes, sir. But the Bible stopped the bullet. Yes, sir. Mr. Kind leaned forward and stared at Esther, causing her to blush. That was when you decided to take the axe to his head? Esther stopped playing with her hair and sat still for a moment before answering. I suppose so. Papa would have killed me if I didn't kill him. You feared for your life? Mr. King continued to stare intently at Esther. Yes, sir. Mr. King abruptly stood up and shook the sheriff's hand. I have all I need. He left quickly, so quickly that it startled Esther. She looked at the retreating back and worried that she had offended such a gentleman. Am I going to get the chair? The sheriff stood slowly, as if it hurt him to do so. He closed his eyes for a moment before answering. His voice, when he spoke, was softer than Esther had ever heard it. Number, you'll get 25 years in the women's prison in San Antone. Minimum. Esther started counting on her fingers. You'll be about 44, Esther. Damn. I reckon I'll be too old to catch a man by that time. The sheriff felt his chest tighten just a little at those words. And Mama? How old will she be? How old is she now? Esther paused, deep in thought. Says she was born in 1901. Then she'll be about 60. Esther nodded, standing and smoothing out her skirt. Reckon she'll take me back when I get out? The sheriff scratched his forehead and looked at the floor. I don't know, honey. I just don't know. Dusra. They're calling us heroes. The newspapers, that is. I suppose we are, but I don't know that I feel heroic. I do, however, feel a difference in me now that Papa's dead. Liberation would be the word. Papa would have hit me if I had ever used that word in front of him. Papa had been drinking, of course, and smacking Mama around. Cassie and I were hiding out in my room, wondering when it would all stop. At one point, I heard Mama scream. That's when I went out to investigate. Papa was pointing a gun at Mama. I didn't even think about what to do. I just did it. I stepped in front of Mama just as Papa shot. The bullet hit my Bible. Yes, I carried a Bible with me, right over my heart, but only when I was wearing overalls. It was fortunate that I was wearing them at this point. I staggered backward and fell. The impact of the bullet stunned me. Mama fell as well, trying to hold me up. That's when Cassie came charging out of the room and started to wrestle with Papa, trying to get the gun out of his hand. We heard another shot. Papa took a bullet to the gut. He died 2 hours later, in a lot of pain. Cassie stood and fairly sprinted out of the house. She came back a few minutes later with her dad, the sheriff. The look on his face was one that will not soon leave me. Pinched and drawn, with worry written clearly in the eyes. Mama should have never been home. She was supposed to go to San Antonio to see her sister, but Papa beat her so bad the night before that she refused to go. I believe that Papa beat her so severely so she wouldn't go. He was like that. Cassie shouldn't have been there either. Her father told her never to go to my house when my Papa was around, but Cassie often defied her father. Her father was so relieved that Cassie wasn't injured or killed that he never punished her. On the contrary, he hugged her tightly and kissed her on the cheek. I had never seen him do that before. I'm supposed to write a story for the newspapers. The one in San Antonio wants to give me and Cassie $50 each for our story. An astounding sum. Some rich people in San Antonio also want to give us full scholarships for college. Imagine going to college. It's in Denton, but that's even better. Cassie and I can get away from the blight of the hill country and experience a different kind of life. A different kind of life. I'm filled with a substantial happiness, and I wonder when it will leave. Never, I hope. The real hero is Mama, and I'll make sure the newspapers know that. All those years of insisting that I go to school, even when Papa beat her for her sass. He called it that anyway. It was grit and toughness and love. I'll call it the stuff that heroism is made of. That has a nice ring to it, and it's the truth. All 3 steps to the elevated porch squeaked under Mr. King's tread, though the man was not heavy. Like the rest of the porch area, they needed paint. Rusted nail heads poked out of the wood, loosened by years of neglect and hill country weather. The evening was soon to turn into dusk. Just spoke to the judge. Cassie ain't to be charged. He said she did us all a favor by shooting that man. Sheriff Culverson didn't show it, but a wave of relief flooded his body. He relaxed a little and felt his breath coming easier. Mr. King sat down and lit a cigar, offering one to the sheriff. Both men took some time to light their cigars, ensuring that they had a proper draw. This was not a task, but a ritual, and it was not to be taken lightly. The sheriff went inside his house and returned in a few moments, bearing a bottle of whiskey and 2 small tumblers. Each man filled their glass to the amount desired and sipped. Mr. King grimaced at the first sip, then took a second, larger sip. I reckon she did us all a favor, sure, but it was an accident. I'm damn happy the judge was of the same mind, the sheriff said. He took another sip of whiskey and sat his glass down, concentrating on puffing his cigar and enjoying the news. You know, I'm surprised one of those women hadn't killed the man before. He sure liked to beat his women, Mr. King said. The mama, the sheriff said. Mr. King turned his head slightly. Pardon? The mama. She made that girl, Esther, get an education. I hear she took a beating or 2 for her daughter. Damn fine woman in my opinion. Mr. King nodded and smiled. He had already heard the news. You went to visit the widow, I hear. The sheriff glanced at Mr. King and then quickly glanced away. Offer my condolences in an official capacity. The sun had disappeared behind the horizon, bestowing faint light and beautiful colors to the sky. Fireflies came out of hiding, their pinpricks of light giving the large front lawn a magical appearance, as if fairies were in attendance, as if a miracle had been bestowed. You were there for 2 hours, Sheriff. That's a lot of, condoling. The sheriff turned and stared at Mr. King, his steely blue eyes narrowing a little. Mr. King laughed and hastened to explain. The old biddies in town, you know what they're like. Most of them had you and the widow making a baby during your visit. Vicious old cats, the sheriff spat out the words. Makes sense, though. You and the widow, Esther and Cassie, are best friends. They'd be tickled pink to become sisters, so to speak. And the widow's a fine, strong woman. You done have us at the altar. Mr. King tamped the ashes from his cigar onto the porch and scuffed them with his boots. He poured himself more whiskey and watched the fireflies perform their chaotic, beautiful dance. Your wife's been gone for 12 years. I reckon you grieved enough, Sheriff. I figure the widow's grieving was non-existent. Can't really miss a man that beats you, can you? The sheriff poured himself another 3 fingers of whiskey and stood at the railing beside Mr. King. He sighed and turned to Mr. King, handing him a $1 bill. I'm hiring you for a 2-minute consultation, Mr. King. Mr. King looked at the bill and put it in his breast pocket. What's on your mind, Sheriff? The sheriff paused for a moment, trying to get the words out of his mouth. I heard Esther and Cassie talking one day last year, just before Christmas. Esther was telling her that she wanted to shoot her daddy dead so he'd stop beating her mama. Well, that froze me. Mr. King looked at the sheriff, a thoughtful expression creasing his face and pursing his lips. I figure she would have done it one day, Sheriff. I guess Cassie took care of that, though. The sheriff sighed. I reckon. So why the $1? We got attorney-client confidentiality now, right? Mr. King laughed, nodding his head. Yes, very clever, Sheriff, but I wasn't going to divulge that little piece of information anyway. I expect a receipt when you get to the office tomorrow. Yes, of course. Come by after work, Sheriff, and I'll buy us a couple of beers. I seem to have an extra $1 in my pocket. The night darkened and the breeze stilled. Even the fireflies slowed down. Soon they were gone, letting the darkness of the night have its way. Both men remained silent. Cigar smoke curled and drifted upwards past the porch lights, disappearing into the blackness. Mr. King left after finishing his whiskey. See you tomorrow, Sheriff, and I'll expect a wedding invitation. I want that receipt, young man. The The rest of the night passed as it should have. Frogs croaked lazily, crickets chirped, and lights winked out one by one across the countryside. 2 young ladies were dreaming of adventures at college. One sheriff was thinking of matrimony, and one widow was contemplating the mysteries of fate and providence. The Bible with a bullet hole in it was, in due time, returned to its rightful owner. The whereabouts of the mangled Word of God is currently unknown. Kill the messenger. Sweetie, look, this was just delivered. It's from... My wife reads the card while unboxing the birthday present, peeling off red gift wrapping. Your Aunt Salome. That's nice. Wait, Aunt Salome? But... ... The red gift wrapping blooms into an orange fireball. The shockwave pushes me, shoves me, throws me hard into the wall. The screams from my wife's birthday party guests are muffled, as if I'm submerged in water deep below the surface. Aunt Salome. Only I know that she is not real. Aunt Salome is the code name for my dispatcher at Zarathustra. She is my sweet old sickly aunt who lives in a nursing home in rural middle of nowhere on the other side of the country, who sends cards for Christmas and birthdays, who has a Facebook account filled with photographs of her, an actress hired by Zarathustra, with me, her favorite nephew, and where she writes bot-generated old lady posts that periodically include a bat signal code phrase to activate me. Zarathustra thinks my marriage is an elaborate cover. They think I'm an unfeeling psychopath who built a facade of respectability by marrying a wholesome suburban everywoman, siring 2 adorably ordinary children. Zarathustra thinks it's all a front, and they're right. I am a psychopath. That's why I'm an effective tool for Zarathustra. I am unfeeling about my assignments. I'm rational, precise, calculating, manipulative, deceptive, effective. I don't make mistakes. I'm a machine. But they're wrong. My marriage is not a facade. It's real. It's the only real thing I have. It's not that I love my wife and my children. Love, like any emotion, is ultimately empty, easy to fake, meaningless. But my family is an extension of me. New limbs I've grown, like a salamander. New heads, like Hydra. If you hurt them, you hurt me. If you hurt me, I will hurt you. He's a slight man, narrow shoulders, thinning blonde hair, almost bald on top, wearing small round glasses with thick lenses. He's half my height, even in the Western boots with 3-inch heels. He walks with a strange gait, as if he is skipping. There's something jaunty about him. I follow him into the office building, staying far behind him since he knows me by sight. When he waves the key card to enter his office, I step up behind him and put the silenced gun barrel into the small of his back. Hello again, I say. His eyes go wide behind the small glasses when I dig the barrel in a little harder. How did you... Let's go! Inside, it's a small office, but with a nice view of the skyline, well appointed with a large desk, an oversized leather executive chair, and 2 computer monitors on a credenza facing the windows. There's a fine layer of dust on the seat cushions of the 2 visitor chairs in front of the desk. No one comes to visit. So, I say, we meet again. You asked how I knew. Well, I remembered the photographer hired by Zarathustra who took the pictures of me with the elderly actress playing the part of Aunt Salome. That photographer was you. When I found out that old lady actress died from natural causes, just a week after that photo shoot. But you didn't. 2 and 2 make 4. You're part of Zarathustra. I don't know what you mean. Zarathustra? I assumed you were a flunky, but that you could lead me to the next rung on the ladder to get to my handler. But now that I see this place, clearly you are more than a flunky. I think you're Aunt Salome. Aunt Dash, you're my handler. Sit down. He sits down behind the desk. I keep standing, gun pointed at him. Why did you kill my wife? I didn't. Let me rephrase that. Why did you order the killing of my wife? Please. I didn't. It had all the markers of Zarathustra. In fact, it's the way I would have done it. Wait, I can explain. Will you allow me? He points, index finger over his shoulder, to the computer monitors. I have a message pre-recorded for this specific situation. It's from the leader of Zarathustra. The leader? Yes. May I? I nod. He swivels the office chair, turns his back to me, brings up web page, completely blank, except for a single open field and the text. Enter password, Z9 asterisks. What's the password? I don't know, but I've been told that you do. He lifts the wireless keyboard from the credenza tray, swivels, and slides the keyboard across the wide expanse of the desk. I shift the gun to my left hand, still pointing the barrel at him. Yes, I do know a password that begins with Z9. The thing is, I'm the only one who does. I keep the gun trained on him as I key in the password. As soon as I enter the password, a video starts playing, and there he is, the leader of Zarathustra. My face. Congratulations, says my face in the video. The sacred game is at an end. The festivals of atonement are over. Since you're watching this video, you're ready for the next step. It's time to take out the middleman, kill the messenger. I shift my silenced gun back into my right hand, but I hesitate. Go ahead, my face on the video says. You don't need Aunt Salome anymore. A feather-light pressure on the trigger, a sound like a cough, a puff of smoke from the barrel, and there's a hole in the little man's forehead. His head snaps back, and he slumps over in the office chair. Aunt Salome is dead. The middleman is gone. The messenger has been killed. My face says, now it's just you. Only you. All you. As it always was. You decide, as you always did. Only now you know that it has always been you making the choices. What's your next assignment? Who's your next kill? The screen goes blank. Outside the window, the skyline, the tall buildings full of people, killer ratings. The stealth drone hovered over the backyard of the suburban house, its camera zooming in close to its subject. A boy, kneeling on the lawn, in one hand a praying mantis, the other a pair of tweezers. Holding the insect close to his expressionless face, he slowly ripped the legs off the mantis. Then once that task was completed, immersed the body in a jar of water that lay on the grass in front of him until the insect stopped struggling and was still. A thin smile played across the boy's face. "Hey, Dave," Richie called out across the bustling studio of Hitchcock Media Enterprises. "Come take a look at this. Think we have a future winner here." Dave looked up from his editing station and walked over to the Richie's terminal, where the balding heavyset man was reviewing the drone footage. "Check this." Richie clicked the play button. "I reckon we got ourselves a classic Type C." Dave watched the replay and nodded. "Yep, definitely Type C. He will be moving on to small animals next, I bet." Dave grabbed a chair and sat down. "What backstory have you got on him so far?" Richie pulled up a file onto the terminal screen. "Let's see. We got a 14-year-old kid, only child, with single-parent mother. Never knew his father." He scrolled down. "Mother is a Christian fundamentalist. Breastfed the kid until he was 2 years old." Narrowed his eyes. "Oh, and get this. She would hop into the bath with him every night, and sponge him clean up until he was 10 when he started getting erections. Dave barked a short laugh. Jesus, where do these people come from? He leaned back in the chair. In the future, people would look back on this time as the era of surveillance, where nothing could be hidden unless you were the rich elite. Still, it made their job a hell of a lot easier, which was to make a shitload of money off human misery. Dave liked to think they were performing a necessary evil, like a safety valve on the pressure cooker that was modern society. That made what he did a little easier, and although he still might not sleep well at night, he did sleep in a large mansion in a secure community next to a cosmetically perfect wife. Richie was talking again. Dave focused his attention on the screen. I've run the algorithms, and the AI is coming up with a 93% chance of activation by the age of 25. Those are good odds, said Dave, rubbing his chin. Put a flag on his file, and we'll check back in a few years. Dave stood up and clapped the other man on the shoulder. The fans are gonna love this one. Richie, good job as always. Richie grinned. Thanks, Chief. Dave returned to his desk, where he was currently editing the latest true crime documentary, to be released later that month. This one was a typical Type B case, a nurse who had been stealthily killing cancer patients by injecting air into their IV drips. A pretty mundane, angel of death scenario, but HME had gotten onto her pretty quick, so the broadcasting and publishing rights hadn't cost an arm and a leg. Dave didn't think ratings would be that great, but they had managed to get some decent footage from the hospital and the journal the nurse had written, so it would be worth syndicating to make a bit more profit. HME's documentaries were some of the highest rating reality shows on Downstream, and let's face it, that's all that existed on mass social media these days. But things had been a little lean of late, and they needed a big, high-profile case. Dave considered Richie's latest find. Type C cases were always male, of low to average intelligence, with suppressed trauma from childhood caused by a family member, and would exhibit acts of violence around the onset of adolescence. The victims were usually female and involved sexual violence or torture before death. We need another Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez, Dave thought. They don't make them like they used to. Dave chuckled. Imagine if we could have got those guys to sign. We would be drowning in royalties. Still shaking his head in amusement, he wandered over to the publicity department. A tall, angular-looking woman, poring over some glossy printouts at her desk, looked up at his approach. Hey, Dave. How can I help you? Hey, Jenny. Just wondering if Anthony is around. Jenny pursed her lips. He was on sick leave, I think. She checked the screen in front of her. He was supposed to be back a few days ago, but I haven't seen him. Maybe he needed some more time off. Okay. I guess it's hard to find good help these days, eh? Jenny laughed politely. Dave leaned against the desk. Look, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for the latest doco, but I'm stumped. Jenny furrowed her brow in concentration. That's the nurse one, right? Dave nodded. And she was an elderly type as well. Her eyes lit up, and she clicked her fingers. How about the matron of mercy? Dave contemplated the idea. You know, that's great. He gave Jenny a thumbs up. It'll play well, considering all the victims were terminal patients anyway. Make for some nice, wholesome family viewing. Jenny gave an absent-minded smile as she returned to her work. Dave was just finishing off the credits for the nurse documentary when one of the interns came rushing over, flustered and red-faced. Sir, I think we have something big, the young man said breathlessly. Maybe even a possible Type A. Dave pointed. Juan, isn't it? He prided himself on knowing all the names of his staff, even down to the gophers. Look, calm down. take a seat and tell me what you've got." The intern sat down and held out a tablet. "We just received some info from one of our talent scouts out in San Francisco. Female, body count of 2, high likelihood of type A." Dave glanced at the picture. Pretty blonde, with freckles and all, a real girl next door beauty. He felt a thrill of exhilaration run through him. A type A was the rarest of the rare, a serial murderer who was charismatic, highly intelligent, and usually politically or ideologically motivated. They were also the most difficult ones to get to sign on the dotted line. "Okay, I'm going to need more details here." Juan read from the screen in his hand. Gordon Calloway, the third CEO of the hedge fund Armada Londi, was found strangled to death in his penthouse suite at the Regency in LA 6 days ago. Our surveillance picked up this woman leaving the room soon after the time of death. Then she just seemed to disappear. The young man licked his lips. Then 2 days ago, a male body was found in a 4th-floor room of the Fairmont in San Francisco. His skin had been totally removed by a surgical device, most likely a scalpel. As a result, the deceased is yet to be identified. He paused and looked at Dave. The same woman was again detected by our surveillance leaving the scene. Dave raised his eyebrows. 2 different methods of killing. Now that was unusual, even for a type A. This was getting better and better. "Now, you are going to love this." The intern smiled. "We have ID on the suspect. Her name is Samantha Bronte, 21 years old and currently studying a master's degree in criminology and comp science at New York University." Dave opened his mouth to speak, but Juan held up his hand. "And this is the clincher. Her parents were the last victims of one Simon Peters." Dave felt his jaw drop. Simon Peters, aka the Cuckold Strangler? His doco from 4 years ago was one of the highest rating of all time. Jesus Christ, this is insane. "Hey, Richie," he yelled out. "Get over here pronto." "What is it?" Richie asked, eyes gleaming. He could tell when something good was going on. "Simon Peters, give us a recap." Okay. So his MO was prowling the motor inns of West Florida, where he would stalk and choose his victims, always middle-class couples. Richie scratched his cheek thoughtfully. He would break into their room early in the morning, tie the couple up at gunpoint, rape and strangle the woman in front of her partner, then slit the guy's throat with a hunting knife. He did us a big favor as well by recording the last 2 murders with his phone. Richie looked down at his hands. Of course, we couldn't use such explicit footage for our feature, but somehow, he winked at Dave. Somehow the footage made its way to the dark web, and the notoriety of that boosted our ratings tenfold. Dave let out a breath. There must be some connection here, but that's not important right now. We need to track this Samantha down, and fast. Dave and Richie exchanged knowing looks. "This is big," Dave said. "Possibly the biggest thing we've ever seen." A notification pinged on Juan's tablet, and he gasped out loud. "What is it?" Dave queried sharply. The intern looked up. "We have just detected the suspect arriving at North Vegas Airport, and from her credit card records, she has booked a room at the MGM Grande for tonight." Dave felt the hairs on his arms stand up. "All right, I'm going to take care of this one personally. We can't afford to lose this. Gonna pack an overnight bag and take our private Gulfstream to Vegas ASAP. Should be there in under 2 hours." He pointed at Richie. "Organize a car for me and alert everyone that it's all hands on deck." Richie nodded briskly. "Will do. And good luck, Dave." Dave arrived at the MGM in the early evening, the desert sunset casting an eerie blood like haze across the dusty parking lot. The hotel lobby was relatively quiet. A few tourist groups checking in, and a scattering of people at the bar. He looked down at the picture on his phone and scanned the area. Nope, not here. Dave fought down a wave of frustration. Okay, gotta stay calm. He glanced at the bar. I'll grab a drink and wait. He ordered a beer, and the gorgeous raven-haired woman next to him gave him a tentative smile. He nodded briskly. Any other time I'd be interested, but it's all business right now, sweetie. He took his drink and sat down at a table, which commanded a view of the lobby entrance and the elevators leading to the suites. This was the crucial moment, the first contact. He found most of the time the killer was flattered, both by the money offered and the chance at infamous immortality. Their name remembered long after the victims had been forgotten. Most of the time. His phone started ringing. Hello? It was Richie. Dave, we got a problem. We've checked the hotel camera and there is no sign of our target, coming or going. Looks like we got scammed. Dave sighed bitterly. Damn it, well, she must be in Vegas somewhere. He looked out the entrance. It was dark now, with the first stars appearing in the velvet night. Look, I'm gonna stay here for a while. Keep your eyes and ears open, and let me know if anything develops. Roger that, Richie replied. Dave sighed again. Might as well get another beer. The dark-haired lady was still at the bar, a few whiskeys in by the looks of the glasses in front of her. She looked at him from under lowered eyelids. I was watching you. Looks like you've been stood up. Dave flashed a wry grin. Yeah, you could say that. A faint smile. Me too. I don't think my date is turning up. She gave him a sultry glance. Look, I have a room here and a bottle of sparkling on ice waiting for me. Want to come up and have a nightcap? Dave chuckled. Still got it. Sure, why not? Maybe we can salvage something out of this shitty situation. Her room was on the 12th floor with an impressive view of the Strip. As she was closing the door behind them, Dave asked, Hey, I didn't catch your name? Oh, how rude of me. It's Samantha. She replied breathily, just as he felt a sharp pinprick, and then everything went black. He awoke groggily, unable to move. After a quick assessment, he realized that was because his hands and feet were restrained with zip ties, and he was lying on a bed with duct tape holding him down. Awake now, my little Dave? The woman was standing beside the bed, gently caressing his arm. He shivered with a frisson of fear. You're Samantha Bronte? He demanded with wide eyes. And how do you know my name? Samantha smiled sardonically. Oh, I know everything about you. She sat down on the edge of the bed. You fell into my trap like such a good little boy. But how? Dave stammered. You'd be surprised at what you can do with a degree in computer science. She continued stroking him with her fingernails. Especially when you have HME's login details from a loyal employee. She took something from the bedside table and plopped it onto his chest with a sickening squelch. I don't think your buddy Anthony is going to be coming back to work anytime soon. He gazed at the reddish-colored object with growing horror. Holy shit, it was his skin. It was Anthony's skin. Samantha dug her nails into his arm viciously. Dave cried out in pain. Do you know what it's like to lose your parents in the most hideous way, and then to have their violation watched again and again by your millions of depraved fans? Dave gasped. Look, honey. We don't make these killers. We just make them famous. If not us, then someone else would. I'm not so sure. Samantha's voice dripped pure venom. But you're going to find out, all of you, what a really dedicated serial killer can do. She took something from under the bed. You and your puerile nicknames. It's only poetic justice to return the favor. Do you recall one of your first documentaries? Samantha stood up. I believe it was called The Boston Bludgeoner. The rusty sledgehammer was the last thing Dave saw. Mother Nature. The story of a serial killer. I don't think fuck, or any other derivative of that monumental word, should be changed to duck when I finger bang my passion into a text. If I ask a man to come over, we're not going to duck anything. South. Also, do you know that ducks take part in forced copulation? Biologists and other smart-ass types say that ducks waddle in a line because it makes them less susceptible to predators. They say the waddle also helps them forage for food. But I think they do it because back at the duck pond, the male ducks waddle their way into organized gang rapes of the female ducks. And ducks kill ducklings. All sorts of shameful criminal acts happen at the duck pond. Yet, some people don't want to eat ducks because of that cute waddling line. A duck is a lucky fuck that way, at least until it gets raped by other ducks, murdered by its parents, or a human who fails to find the charm in waddling decides to eat it. Predator. Prey. Another day. My cat loathes ducks, yet their rampages entertain her. We live in a gated community because I inherited a house here. This community created ponds throughout the neighborhood, filling them with ducks and, even worse, swans that patrol the streets like winged lunatics. Everywhere I look, there's a monster that wants to kill me. This cat I took in, she struggled to rip off my face seconds after we met. Then I fed her, scratched her ears, cleaned her wounds, and slayed the fleas that tormented her. Put a heat lamp on the screened-in porch so she can watch the ducks and swans brutalize each other. She helps me too, in ways that challenge basic concepts regarding help. By the way, it's good to meet challenges head-on, but not head-first. My last hookup learned that the hard way, so avoid following self-help ideas about how you control every challenge that crosses your path. You control as much as some other entity lets you. Let me tell you how I got this cat. As I mentioned, she wanted to kill me. It began with her clawing my face, which led to the discovery of a dead man's hand. Star, don't let anyone tell you that crashing into a wall to avoid hitting a cliché in an alley equates to doing the right thing. It equates to pain, especially if the four-legged fucker waits to attack you after you exit the car. The cat I took in waited for me to get the car door open, then let me know who owned the alley. The pain of others engages the masses. They heard the surrender of steel, followed by shrieking. So they scurried across the alley from business back doors like rats scurrying across a dumpster. Several videoed me as I pulled each claw from my face and struggled to dodge fangs. As I fell to the ground, I saw one man rummaging through my glove compartment. The cat finally let go with a low growl and then ran under the car. That's when I noticed the hand hanging over the low wall of a parking garage. I wasn't the only one who noticed. "Oh my God, there's a hand over there!" someone shouted. I darted across the pavement on my hands and knees to avoid feet intent on trampling. My skin ripped and burned. I panted as the pain from the crash and the crawl began to clash. The click of heels against the ground offered a moment's reprieve from the sensation of being ripped apart. Curiosity commands the ability to subjugate fear. Victims learn this firsthand. Without this act, no one moves on. I peeled my face off the ground. A woman in black leather pants and a tight white tank loomed over me, accessories dripping off her like groupies made of gemstones. She looked like Tom of Finland drew her if he had been into women. "Your clothing is so beige," No one else can tell where your blouse ends and your trousers begin. But I see you, she said. You're like those dangerous creatures that blend in with the leaves. Lady, I just crashed my car. I just shredded my hands and knees to avoid being trampled. Unless you're here to help, fuck off back to your dungeon. I said I see you. I didn't say anything about helping you. Well, not in the usual way. I turned back to the car, and she loomed in front of me again, though I never saw her move. I have more to say. You and that cat both play a vital role in the call. My call. You need to help each other, which helps me. You two are going to come to a mutual understanding somehow, some way. We sure are, the cat said. And that is when I fainted. Star. When I regained consciousness, news stations were filming the parking garage, the alleyway, and the soulless man who boasted to me that he lasted longer than other men, something he learned at an orgy for retirees. I went back to spend time with him because he was my first kill. I wanted more memories with him, like a mother saying goodbye to her child at college if the mother thrives on blood and guts. But all I saw was his hand, the one that struggled to get the knife away from me after the coke-fueled fucking and drug-laced wine. Someone had moved his body from where I left it, but I recognized the ring that signified his happy marriage to a wife who understood his needs. I longed to roll in his innards again, but it wasn't meant to be. The leather-clad woman told the EMTs to let me go. It's like she was never here, she said, cradling the cat. She knows nothing about a hand or any job related to it. The EMTs smiled. I felt like a kitten, but at least I was not a duck waddling into a bad group hug. Not yet. Star, a cat's methods for slaughter command merit. She's one of many masters created to maintain balance. At least I didn't ask a rhino to handle your tutelage, Mother Nature said, as she stretched her stiletto boots across my table. That's a one-time lesson, and quite an ugly one. You arranged the crash. You made choices that led to this moment. The cull relies on your choice and my preference. The cull demands my attention around the clock. That same attention consumes you, yet you lack any real skill at killing. You're uninformed about death, how to cause it, or navigate it with a professional standard. You left the body in a place where a homeless man sleeps, so he moved it. You have no real control. None of you do. You make choices while lacking control. That amuses me. Like arms grasping for God through the foam of a typhoon amuses me. Well, at least we do something right. I want you to live for an extended period of time, but you need more skill when you kill. You choose to kill. Fine, that helps me. But give me something to look forward to besides banality. You gush over your achievement, but last night in this city alone, 15 people killed a person they met online for sex. All obvious, sloppy efforts. Enough. The cat can give you some skill and flair. I mean, really, you two work well together. That alley battle was tremendous. Otherwise, look forward to death row. The cat can return to the alley. What's an extended period of time? You can't live forever, so until the cat dies. Keep in mind, that stuff about 9 lives amuses me too. Meow. Sabrina sat with one leg in the air, licking her ass. Master indeed. Yet masters die too. What will happen after I die? Maybe I wanted the dead to reach out through the veil and tell me. After all, I wanted to solve a big mystery for them in a way that impressed Mother Nature more than a typhoon drowning. I'm the one left salivating for knowledge in the dark, not them. Sabrina ceased licking and rubbed against my feet. We agreed to live together as predator and prey, though we both recognized the real predator in the room. Sabrina likes me to trap men like she traps mice, so she gave me a whole lesson on how to seduce prey with my walk. "You mesmerize them with slink," she said, purring. "Let them feel your kink vibration. Stop texting about ducks. Stop waddling like a duck before I actually place you in the pond with that second man." Mother Nature giving you a voice is the worst thing she's ever done. "Where are the tuna treats? I want the whole bag this time." We each depend on the other to create balance for her and for you, to live a life posthumously. The casket was oak with a mahogany finish. A yellow cut sunflower lay haphazardly between the fingers of the body, the most color offered in the small, run-down church. Only 3 people entered the room. Only 3 took seats in the front aisle, chipped gas cans and matchboxes in hand. The uniformity of the black outfits made the room feel smaller, duller. The only respite was the small, almost seamless lines of dark gray thread interwoven into the fabric of each person's blazer. An imperfection, yes, but a consolation for him nonetheless. Each blazer told a different story: missed meals and burning anger, a car, a sunflower field, and unfortunate truths, old fortunes and new beginnings. That was what they were. Memories of a time when he lived, stories into the person he was. So as he watched the 3 effortlessly coat the aisle seats and checkered floors with oil, watched as the papers of his existence become pliant under the weight of the foreign substance, he thought back to a time when he simply was. The calm before the storm. It is bright and damp. A cold draft whistles through the broken roof of the rundown house. The only warmth apparent was from the overused patchwork blanket and the 2 sizes to big black blazer, the price tag still attached. Silas felt along the side of the stiff material, wincing at the tear already present from the rusted sharp metal of old Mac's wired fence. Damn it, my first big job, and I already made a mess. His father would not be happy. He got up and slipped down the stairs from the rickety attic, stopping shortly as he heard the hushed voices in the kitchen. He readied himself to flee before carefully peeking through the gap in the door. "You said you would stop. You promised me you wouldn't steal or sell again, that when the kids were born, we would start fresh." Mama clenched the ladle in her hand, the remaining soup on it, slowly dripping onto the floor. Silas's stomach clenched at the wasted food. Mama never wasted food. Father seemed to realize this too, as his large shoulders seemed to shrink under his wife's eyes. The gun he was cleaning in his hands, less a threat compared to her ever-growing anger. "We did. I have. But this time it was personal. He attacked this family's integrity. He questioned our worth. I had the money we could have paid, but he wouldn't let us. So we left, taking only what we rightly deserved." He attacked the gun with a new sense of purpose, the black residue coming off further, staining his stubby fingers, leaving the faint scars still visible on them to almost glow against his sunburnt skin. They both became still, the anger permeating the room colder, clearer. It felt like a line had been drawn, with one person on each side. It felt permanent. "Then know this, Antonio. We have followed you around as you have shepherded us like sheep to the slaughter, purposefully ignorant. I wonder when we are dead and gone, if you will still try to talk of integrity." Silas's stomach clenched and rumbled. He wished he was somewhere else. What once was still is. It was windy and hot, the moon the only source of light. The leather shift grated against his hand as the car flew around the corner. Fuck, 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 the police were gaining. "Damn it, Silas, push it!" Creed's voice echoed around the car, his brother's patience waning. It felt like he was stuck underwater. Everything seemed to merge into one. His black blazer stuck to his skin as perspiration slowly fell down his neck. His fingers shook and his pulse raced. Breathing felt hard. It was too hot. It was too sticky. It was too dark. Everything was just too much. Houses passed in a blur as they raced away from the inevitable. The sound of the siren receded and returned like waves upon the shore. They were coming to the end of the street. Beside them, hidden behind the buildings, was a field of sunflowers. Their brightness diminished due to the enveloping darkness. Ahead was a dusted-out dirt road where they would most certainly be arrested. Creed's tattooed fingers came into his line of view. His pointer extended to the side of Silas. Turn here, down this side street. Once you get to the end, drive straight into those flowers and cut the engine. The car lurched to the left, the wheels leaving the ground from the sudden turn before gravity took over, and Silas rammed the vehicle into the complying field and buried the flowers under the tracks of his tires. Silas turned sharply once more before turning off the ignition. A loud silence consumed the car as everything settled, the void only filled by the slight tapping sound of their boots and stuttering breaths. The siren passed, taking with it Silas's anxiety, but not his anger. He waited a few before speaking. I thought this was meant to be a small job. No cops, no competition, just a simple drop-off. He watched Creed pull at the tie around his throat, his ample fingers moving quickly and with purpose. It was. Dad knew that Anthony would pull one on him, so he asked me to switch the cargo before handing it over. Anything the cops find will come back to him, not us. Silas scoffed. So he told you, but didn't bother to tell me. We could have been caught, or worse, we could have died. I have an econ paper due, and instead of doing that, I am wasting away in a car with someone who would rather have no future. The veins on Creed's head throbbed as his anger increased. No future? This family is your future. How many times do I have to tell you that? Ondiam vai, was Otris sagging. The sound of Creed's phone ringing stopped Silas from responding as he listened with bated breath to the sharply spoken conversation. The awkward silence rose as Creed finished his phone call, both boys now leaning on their slightly open doors, the cool breeze doing nothing to calm the blistering rage from their prior conversation. Dad said he will be here in 30. You've been asked to wait. Creed pocketed his phone, a scowl resting on his face. Silas looked at the sunflowers beside him, watching them sway and jitter like puppets on a string. Control or be controlled, as his father always said. It was a pity he wasn't the latter. He curled his fingers in feeling at the moon-shaped scars on his palm, forcing down the words he wished he could say, and closed his eyes. Yeah, I guess we wait. The end. The room was ablaze in orange and yellow, the snap of the fire against the brawny wood aisle seats and fabric curtains like the crescendo in a song, dramatic and loud. In all the abruptness and carnage, Silas felt at peace. Looking down at his body, hair slicked back, black blazer on, Silas felt he could finally move on. The slow opening of the doors drew his attention back as he watched the backs of his family exit the burning church. A small hand rested itself on his shoulder. Its voice was soft and almost overtaken by the symphony of sounds made by the flames. It is time. Silas took one final look at himself before turning and walking into the shadows. Murder at the Roadhouse Saloon. I dozed, peacefully drooling on the notes from my philosophy class when the phone began its merciless shriek. My heart stopped. Notes, pens, and phones scattered across the floor in my shocked and befuddled response. Groggy, I rifled through the refuse until the lighted face of the phone gleamed from under the bed. Grabbing it, I cursed the caller. The ID announced, Carol. Who the hell is Carol, and why is she calling at... I checked the time in the upper left corner of the phone. 4 p.m.? I rubbed the grit from my eyes and checked the ID again. Oh, that Carol. I wonder what she wants. Cousins and the only children of twin mothers and abusive fathers, we called whenever we needed support. Her father, murdered outside a saloon near the rail yard, and mine, a miserable drunk. We spent many hours commiserating about how we hated our families. Hey, Ed, did I wake you? Number, I was reviewing my philosophy notes. You were asleep. Sorry, but I need to talk to you. She sounded agitated, upset. Okay. She'd gotten a call from some lawyer about the estate of our recluse, Aunt Zoe. Estate? I didn't know the stingy old bag. No one did. Why you? Why not one of her sisters? They hate each other as much as they hate Aunt Zoe. Zoe was the elder of the three, and they hadn't spoken to each other in years. The lawyer said Aunt Zoe named me as executor of her will. Wow! I drilled my left eye with the knuckle of my index finger. Did you know her? Jerk, what a stupid question. Yeah, sure, we're best friends. No. Sorry, I'm not awake yet. How can I help? Thanks. I knew I could depend on you. I chuckled. I'm all you've got. You don't know the half of it. So the lawyer told me she has a storage unit with all her belongings, and we need to sort through them. Oh God. Was she a hoarder? I can see it now, digging through mounds of useless crap, rat dung and spoiled food. Better get us some hazmat suits. Carol barked a sudden laugh. You watch too much TV. Not with the classes I'm taking, just an overactive imagination from being sequestered in this room. Well, here's your break. Can you meet me out at the U-Haul on Tate Street Saturday, say, about 10 a.m.? That's awfully early. You can handle it. I want to get through this quickly. I'll treat you to lunch. I'll be there. Saturday, 10 a.m. I set the phone down and sat cross-legged on the bed, rubbing my eyes. Although neither of us lived at home, our weird, dysfunctional family dynamics haunted us at every turn. 3 sisters who hated each other and seldom spoke. The older sister, Zoe, a recluse, and the others are trapped in undesirable situations. My parents hated each other and should have divorced years ago, but couldn't figure out how. Carol's father dead, and the killer still unknown. Her mother was angry at everyone and everything, but unable to figure out why. We had temporary hope and happiness when we connected. Zoe, I'd never met her. I'd heard she was caustic and could squeeze a nickel until it squealed. Saturday rolled around and I overslept my alarm. After wolfing down some toast, I grabbed 2 lattes from Starbucks and parked outside the storage unit. Relieved that I didn't see her car, I slumped back in the seat. One of the building's hallway doors opened, and Carol sauntered up to the driver's window. I opened it about an inch. Oversleep? Number, I'm 5 minutes early. I got here 15 minutes ago. You're late. Cut me some slack. I got you a latte. Oh, how sweet. I wish you were my brother. Am I forgiven? Even though my clock said I was early? Yeah, let's get this done. Thanks for coming. You know I meant it when I said, I'm all you've got. Yeah, I thought of that too. She sipped her latte, muttering, so strange. And they're sisters. Well, let's do this. She held up the pinky finger of her left hand as I got out of the car. Together? What? We're back in grade school. Come on, best friends, secret pact. She waved her pinky. I hooked hers with my left pinky. Always. Our secret pact, as unique as the port wine-colored birthmarks tracing the length of our joined fingers. A sign we told all our classmates that made us special with secret powers, and when joined together, unbeatable. A stupid kids game that became our trademark and kept us close. I followed Carol down a long hall of articulated doors. She stopped at one of the middle units, pulling a key from her pocket and stuck it in the padlock. It still bothers me, I mused. She held the lock but didn't turn the key. What? Why would someone you never knew make you executor of her will? She grinned. My reaction to sorting through the old bag's hoard was bad, but you should have heard Mom's. She gave the lawyer hell and hung up on him. How'd your mom react? I gave my shoulders a lift and squeezed my face with an exaggerated frown. Beats the hell out of me. If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. She pinched her lips together and shook her head. Family dynamics. She must have really been pissed at our mothers. The padlock snapped open. Ah, you ready for the big reveal? Open sesame. The door rolled up. We stood there with our mouths open. You're kidding? Carol shifted to one foot, tapped the toe of the other, and curled her fists against her hips. Every exhale snapped from her lips with a soft puff. I cracked up. You certainly needed help. We stood in the doorway of the mid-sized locker, me snickering and Carol puffing, and stared at two steamer trunks standing on end in the middle of the otherwise empty unit. No hoard, no clutter, nothing but those two steamer trunks. Carol glanced at me from the corner of her eye and told me to shut up. Then she patted her hands together. Well, you take one trunk, and I'll take the other, and we'll get out of here in half the time. Whatever floats your boat. We still on for lunch? You and your appetite. And with that, we strolled up to the trunks and opened them. Years of memories spilled out in a flood of photos and letters and toys. We stood there in stunned silence. What is this? The overwhelming sight numbed me. How do we sort this out? Where do we begin? Well, I dropped to my knees. I guess we start digging. Carol nodded blankly and followed my lead. Together, we sifted through the life of this discarded person, someone we knew nothing about, awed at what we touched, held, and read. Out of this confused detritus of an enigma's life blossomed a persona of love and caring that eluded everyone who thought they knew her. In this kaleidoscope of wonder, we buried ourselves until I stretched and glanced at my watch. God almighty, we've been sitting here for almost 6 hours. It's 2:45. Carol sat back and crossed her legs, holding what appeared to be a letter. Hey. Her voice broke, and large tears began to roll down her face. You gotta read this. She held it out to me. The paper shook in her hand. A large knot twisted in my stomach. For an instant, I stared at her swaying hand. I didn't want to read whatever was written on that page, but an urge somewhere deep inside forced me to take it. At first, I only saw Carol's eyes and the strange, frightening focus they held. But then the words, written in a graceful script, sucked the breath from my lungs and left me gasping. My hand flopped in my lap, my arm weakened by the weight of the message. I stared at the trunk's latch, gathering my thoughts and fighting to still my pounding heart. I turned to Carol as a new wave of tears crested in her eyes. You're my sister. She answered with a rapid nod and hid her quivering lips behind her hands. My God, but why? waved my hand toward the contents of the open trunk. I think this is starting to make sense. I pushed aside the clutter, digging toward the bottom corner, and stopped. I pulled out a birth certificate, mine, and held it up with 2 fingers like it was radioactive. She held a similar one up to me. The certificates list Zoe as our mother, but no father. Deflating thoughts of illegitimacy flooded my mind, stopped by Carol's words. "Read the second page of the letter," she said, her voice thinning. Bile-laced fear lashed the back of my throat, but the sour taste receded, overwhelmed by my need to know. The muscles in my throat swelled. I couldn't read the words for the blurring in my eyes. Blinking, a wet saltiness spilled into my mouth. I looked at Carol, my fading words pushed across my lips in wisps. He raped her. Twice! The bastard raped her twice! Carol threw her arms around my neck. "I'm glad the son of a bitch is dead. I could kiss whoever killed him." We relished the comfort of each other's arms, and finally withdrew, sitting back and inhaling languid breaths, drained of emotion and strength. I wiped my face with my shirt sleeve and gazed at Carol. "Well," I chuckled. "Sis, what now?" She leaned her head back and took a deep breath, puffing out her cheeks and blowing the air toward the ceiling. Then her head slumped against her chest. "I don't know. Bro." The metal walls of the unit rattled with shrieks of laughter. I slanted my head toward her. "But, I mean, he was your... Sorry. I mean, our father raped our mother." "Well, until now we knew him as my father." She chuckled. "What a fucking shock. But, I mean, did our mothers know? Is that why we ended up with her surrogate twin sisters?" "I don't know, and to tell you the truth, I don't care. I've wondered why I never felt a connection to my parents. Now I know. They aren't my parents. Shit. Here's the clincher." I pulled a photo of Zoe from the pile. She must have been around 20. I handed it to Carol. She was quite a knockout. No wonder your dad couldn't keep his hands off her. Take a look at her pinky." Carol brought the photo closer, then studied her own pinky, and then mine. Same birthmark. A dark sadness pained me, and my eyes blurred. Carol brushed a tear from my cheek. "I know what you're thinking. I would have liked to have known her, too." We wrapped our arms around each other and pulled each other close like the lost brother and sister we were. I kissed her cheek. "Thanks, sis. I needed that." "Uh-huh." She took the letter and reread the second page. "What did you make of this last paragraph?" I didn't get that far. She handed it back and I read it a half dozen times. "Remove the tape from the anchor." I glanced at the trunks and the piles surrounding us. "I don't know. These trunks must be 100 years old. I don't have a dot." I stopped, staring at the interior of my trunk, then Carol's. Scenes of the early 1900s decorated the interior linings. Famous destinations adorned the lining of her trunk, and famous cruise liners adorned mine. Wait a minute. I emptied my trunk and scrutinized the lining. The Titanic sat at anchor in one corner. I shined the light from my phone, and a 5 or 6 inch piece of clear tape, starting at the Titanic's anchor chain, gleamed. I pulled the tape, revealing a tear in the fabric behind it. As I peeled the fabric back, Carol squeezed closer, peering over my shoulder. I heard her breath stop. Beneath the fabric was a thin brown envelope and another photo. I glanced up at her. More surprises? Let's see 'em, damn it. I pulled the photo out. Carol gasped. This was taken at the roadhouse, where my dad was murdered. I brought the photo closer and squinted at the two figures at the bar. Shit. Those two at the bar are our dads. Yeah, and by the looks, yours is about to punch mine. He really looks pissed. I flipped it over. It's dated. Carol snatched the photo from my hand and choked a soft gulp. Jesus, that's the night he was killed. I'm sure my face reflected her look of confusion. Like, is it possible? Did my dad murder yours? She tilted her head and squeezed the tip of her tongue between her lips. She must have read my mind. It's possible. But why? She murmured. I gave her a half-hearted shrug. I don't know. Jealousy? I sensed my eyes suddenly widening as the idea sunk in. Crap. Were they fighting over Zoe? Did my dad have designs on her too? Only one way to find out. Ask him. Carol jumped to her feet, but I grabbed her arm before she could leave. Wait. I held up the brown envelope. We haven't opened this yet. She knelt as I tore the envelope's flap and removed 2 sheets of paper. I don't think we need to ask. I waved one in front of her nose. This is a sworn deposition. Carol took it and read it. Everything we need to know is there. How your dad raped her and threatened her, and that my dad didn't kill him. I don't understand. Why did she wait? Why didn't she go to the police? Who knows? She's gone. I rubbed the stubble on my cheek. But I have a theory. What? Revenge. You're kidding. I shook my head. A warm flood of satisfaction swept over me. Nope. He was always a suspect, and she knew he was in a miserable marriage. Hell, I was there. I saw it. Obviously, he didn't know she knew. Whatever it was, she knew. But then maybe she got more satisfaction out of watching him wallow in his own personal hell, drinking his life away, broke, living with a woman who hated him. I know Mom wouldn't leave him because she wanted him to be miserable. Maybe she knew too. He wouldn't get a divorce because all sorts of shit would come out about it. Wow, you gotta be angry to wait that long. Holy crap. My mouth dropped. What? I held up the second sheet. This is her will. Carol sat up. Did you know she was married? She shook her head. 35 years. Her husband died 6 years ago, which explains your choice as executor, I guess. Well, what's in the will? My saliva turned to sand. I shoved the paper toward her. The more she read, the wider her eyes became. She slapped the palm of her hand over her mouth. Is that a $sign with 5 zeros behind it? My head bowed toward her in 2 quick, stunned nods. Carol broke into a hysterical laugh. She left everything to us. Where did she get it? Who cares? If that ain't revenge. I turned a sober look her way. What now? It took her a long moment to contain her laughter. Then it sank in. Get a lawyer? That's a good start. I clasped my hands around hers. We've learned a lot today. Good things about you and me. I just hope her will, what she gave us, won't come between us. She smiled. Never. Let's talk options with the lawyer, and she surveilled the residue of Zoe's secret life. Come back and clean this up later. I don't think I can handle any more revelations. No truer words were spoken. How about pizza and a pitcher of beer? I'm ready. She pulled the padlock key from her pocket. I'll lock up and meet you outside. Oh. I stopped and picked up a small envelope and handed it to her. This was clipped to the back of the will. It's addressed to you. Me? She turned it over in her hand. Take your time. I'll wait outside. Carol rolled the door closed and locked the padlock. She put the key in her pocket, opened the envelope and removed a photo. Her breath hung in her throat. She dropped it like it burned her fingers and stumbled toward the exit, but then turned, ran back, and snatched it from the floor. She stared at it, mumbling, "That's me, at the roadhouse." She shot quick glances up and down the hallway and collapsed against the wall, rubbing the back of her hand across her lips. Closing her eyes for a moment, she rolled her head from side to side and then read the notations on the back of the photo. Dated the night her father died, the sweat ran down her neck in rivulets and her flesh turned cold. Below the date, 8 words, penned in Zoe's graceful script, closed the door to her enigmatic life. "I know you killed him. He deserved it, robbing hookers." When the cab struck us, Mecca ricocheted off 7th Avenue South and died. Mecca was a stupid nickname for a first-generation Chinese guy from Queens. He always said that any woman would make the journey for his love. Even dead, he looked like a heart attack waiting to happen. Maybe he lost control of the motorcycle because of a heart attack. Overeaters should not be getaway drivers. A siren wailed. There's always a siren in the city. But Mecca was past that siren's help, and me, I didn't want it. I picked up the bag and limped toward the Bowery. Star. At home, I sat by an open window, swatting gnats and biting my tongue as rubbing alcohol seeped into the gashes on my knees. Garbage wafted in the breeze. Everything surrenders during summer in the city. It would be my luck to rob an in-call service, then die from an infection caused by a motorcycle wreck during the getaway. A small bag of clothes and the money sat by the door. I had planned to leave for Port Authority right away, but surrendered to the Chinatown futon instead. When I woke up, I opened another beer and wondered about the protocol for riding a bus cross-country drunk. What the fuck? It's not like it's first-class transportation, or like they'll ask me to drive. I can be drunk, I thought. But I definitely needed to shower because I'd kill anyone who sat next to me on a bus, smelling like I smelled. Jesus Christ. Heading west is always such a big deal. Seems like no one ever heads west without someone dying, I thought. I still think that. Mecca drove like a maniac the first night we met at a bar in the East Village. I needed someone to buy me drinks. He said he'd buy me dinner too. The bike flew toward the West Village like a shooting star that sizzled to its demise at an outdoor cafe full of hopefuls searching for a spark or some such fuckery. He slurped a lot of fettuccine. I sipped a lot of Chianti. You were a Soho boomer? I couldn't care less. Really, I couldn't. But he was buying, so I pretended to care. Yeah, a loft baby. My parents own a laundromat in Flushing, and they gave me money to invest in a .com, which went under. Then they gave me money to open a skate shop in the East Village. It's high roller. I ball. You skate? Fuck no, but I don't have to. I just have to make sure others do. What does your beautiful self do all day? Temperature. As a receptionist mostly. I cater sometimes. I studied art, painting and drawing. A few years ago, I was featured as part of a new artists show at a gallery. No one bought anything. Then 9/11ths. The gallery closed. Hey, maybe you can draw some designs for the shop. You sure you're not hungry? Eating kept me from getting sloppy drunk and forgetting. I raised my glass to not eating. He pointed his fork. Sauce splattered my nose. You need to paint and shit. Be an artist and shit. Let's make you one and shit. Star. A few months later, his shop closed. Temp jobs ceased. It was the second September 11th death toll. Mecca, a baller no more, depended on family money to survive while buying me groceries, carrying the bags up 6 flights while I rearranged cabinets to make room for all the things he liked to eat while hanging out at my place. You like these? God, oh God, I love the creamy center. Have one, he said, ripping open a plastic-wrapped cake with his teeth. I shook my head. Not eating meant not keeping up with time or when I last left the apartment. No work meant no reason to leave. After 97 years in New York City, the insurance office where I temped succumbed to 2 planes that didn't hit it. Catering dried up. I wondered if there was somewhere else and wondered how long until the rest of the country wondered if there was somewhere else. Everyone said it was all Bush's fault, but he didn't have enough sense for it to be all his fault. The world wanted to blow us up. Someone blow me up, I thought. I just wanted to disappear more than anything. I was so far behind on rent, I didn't think winning the lottery could pay it off. Mecca went to the bathroom. I opened the window. Outside, restaurant supply and lighting stores floundered alongside bars in the wild frontier remnants of Bowery bums and SROs. In the 1700s, the Bowery sprawled with green. Giant bugs swam through the marshland. Natives hunted. Europeans came to see what's what. Natives became red. Europeans became white. Everyone saw the colors of the faces instead of the colors of the land. The swamps dried up and the buildings built up. People died. People were born. They died. Bugs survived. I flicked one into the frontier. A little girl looked up and flipped me off. Mecca approached from behind, sniffing my hair. I moved to the futon. He got another cake. Hey, so, do you remember how I told you that sometimes I go to that place in Midtown? Well, I talked to the owner. She needs help and you need rent. Help at the poker game? Like serving drinks? Or dealing cards? Yeah, well, funny thing is, there's no poker. It's pussy. It's an in-call service. My laughter offended Mecca. It's not funny. Sorry, I never realized you were that lonely. He shrugged. It's not loneliness, it's convenience. You keep turning me down and you know a man like me has needs. Don't piss me off. I just bought you groceries and gave you money and didn't even ask you to jerk it or anything. Right. I should be thankful. It's in a big duplex-style apartment on the first floor of a gated brownstone. Very safe. She needs someone to book clients. You're a receptionist, so why not? Oh, yes, well, I moved here to be a receptionist, you know. Everyone knows artists need day jobs before hitting it big, and you'd only work a few shifts a week. The rest of your days are free to paint. The money's great. You can buy art supplies. All the girls tip the bookers. Some of the clients do too. I do. Just meet the owner. So I did. Star. 2 days later, I met Tiffany's diamond at a Mexican place in Hell's Kitchen. Her skin reminded me of an avocado. She spewed guacamole when she spoke, which was often. You know how it is. Us career women can't trust small-time bitches with the books, plus we gotta watch our men. Jesus, ain't it awful? How many times did one of my true loves spend my money, then turn around and tell me to fuck someone for more? Glad I run things now. I really did not have a reply for that, so sipped my beer, hoping a nod and a smile sufficed. Cops and politicians are some of my best clients. I have top-notch security, too. You'll be safe. Coming in as a phone girl shows initiative, and if you want, you can take some clients, too. You got a not-so-hard look that men like for the girlfriend requests. All my girls look like whores that have a side job as gladiators, though you and I both know a man will fuck this here burrito if nothing else is around, she said, bean juice dripping down her chin. Just keep it in mind. For now, I'll show you how to know who's a legit client and who's not. If you keep things classy, you know, keep the towels and soap stocked so the girls can wash their pussies, We'll get along just fine." She smiled, trying to use one of the tortilla chips as a toothpick, then ate it. That might be the moment I decided that I hated her. Tiffany's diamond, a hooker without a heart of gold. Star. She used an intercom for clients, and they had to provide a password after buzzing the apartment. The work was okay for a while, but I kept wondering about that somewhere else. When I realized that she didn't use cameras, and she didn't plan on replacing the security guy she fired for eating her leftover guacamole, I decided to rob her. I knew where she kept the cash. I knew where she kept her guns and knives. I knew Mecca would help me because his first-generation parents were tired of his antics. They worked hard. None of us did. Star, Mecca, and I waited by the gate for someone to exit. Then we waited for someone else to come out of the building. We acted like we'd been looking for a key, then walked in, sliding ski masks over our heads as we approached the door. When one of the girls brought out the garbage, we forced our way in, shoving everyone into a bedroom. Tiffany's reached under the couch cushion for her gun. I knew the gun wasn't there because I moved all the weapons the last time I worked. Mecca shoved everyone into a bedroom and told them sit on the floor, heads down, while I emptied out the cash from the hiding spots. I had to keep an eye on Mecca too, because he was so nervous that he forgot to pack 2 helmets. The gun shook in his hand. We had agreed not to talk. Then he talked, and even worse, he said my name. "Let's go, Lori." I knew Tiffany's heard him. As we ran out the door, she said, "I will blow off their fucking heads." But we had her guns, and we were gone. Star. I never said anything to Mecca about saying my name. There was no time. I hoped he didn't know. I hoped he died a hero in his own mind. He thought he was helping me, and he died thinking I'd show him around California. And honestly, it was my day off. And I'm pretty short, so it's not like it would be that hard for even Tiffany's to figure out I was behind one of the ski masks. So there I sat, everything done poorly, planning a new life. The sunlight bouncing off an illegal cable hookup on a roof across the street got my attention. Soon, such second-rate sunsets would be a memory. I decided to shower. California, here I come, right back where I never started from. I sang to myself, painting on the beach, working in a bar. It could be good for me. Gonna do it right this time, I thought. The thought didn't last. A sharp whistle pierced the air. It sounded like a piano falling in a cartoon. I ran to the window. Traffic lights blinked. People screamed. On the sidewalk, a man and woman cowered. "What was that?" the woman said. "We should call 911, he replied. "I'm calling. Are you calling? My call's not going through. It's September 11th again." "My phone works. Besides, it's August. Can't be September 11th. Then it's August 14th. August 14th is the new September 11th. An old man stumbled off a stoop. "I got a weather radio. It's a power outage. Other cities got hit too. I'd rather go through 9/11 again. At least I didn't lose my window unit then. It's 900 degrees, and I gotta listen to you monkey fuckers." A woman walked toward the old man. "You sick son of a bitch. My mother died in the first tower." "Aw, I got a dead mother too. Typhoid fever epidemic of 1812. The arguing continued, but I had no time for it. I wished I could take a plane, but they would be backed up for hours now, and all the 9/11 security made them too risky anyway. A power outage meant no subway and a cab nightmare. Maybe I could hitch a ride to Port Authority and just wait for the buses to start rolling again. I had already robbed someone and watched Mecca die. Hitchhiking was the least of my worries. Still, I had left the guns with Mecca. Suddenly, my landline rang. Hello. I keep saying that cell phones are just a fad. Look, here I am calling you from a payphone during a blackout while everyone else is jamming up the towers. People act like those things are something, but mark my word, they'll be gone by 2007. There's nothing else you can do with them but listen to them fail during an emergency. Cigarette smoke never sounded so serious. That was odd to me, as that serious sound was coming from a woman who reminded me of an avocado. But I knew I was in trouble. Is it in a suitcase? Bus or train? I always wondered why you never got any new clothes with all the money I paid. Now I know it wasn't enough. You got greedy tastes. You're a fine one to talk. All the money you make, you still look like Jersey. Jersey's got rents and restaurants just like the city. Sometimes they're better than what you find here. Matter of fact, I just went out there to replace some hardware. The people I know in Jersey got great hardware. And now that my favorite Sopranos extra has driven back to the city with me, a blackout hits. Our hardware works great in a blackout, though. How did you get this number? The question should really be whether or not I shoot that old man who keeps screaming about his air conditioner before or after I shoot you. The phone went dead. Kneeling under the window, I scanned the street and saw Tiffany's standing by the payphone next to the bodega, with her hair blowing like straw in the breeze. A guy who actually did look like an extra on The Sopranos got out of a black sedan. Tiffany's had the nerve to put out her cigarette, then chew on an ice cream cone as they crossed the Bowery to kill me. I grabbed a knife and stood to the right of the door, unlocking it slowly. I cracked it just enough to see what was what. For the first time in a long time, I felt hungry. It took a while, but heavy pants finally echoed up the stairs. Why do you always have to hire people that live in 6th floor walk-ups? The man said, leaning on the banister. Good God, I can't kill anyone until I catch my breath, Tiffany said. I flung open the door with the blade down and plunged the knife into the extra's back. He tumbled down the stairs. I turned and came face to face with that ice cream cone. Only then did I realize I needed 2 knives. Killing isn't as easy as it looks in the movies or even on the news. It requires planning to do it well. Tiffany's didn't even have her gun out, and she was dumb enough to warn me she was coming. But living as I live now, I know that the criminal mastermind is a thing of fiction. Most criminals suffer from egos, not masterminds. Crime or life just comes down to thinking you can take and eat and move on. I decided that I was ready to move on and find out about that somewhere else. I shoved her against the wall. White powder glistened on the edge of her nostril. The ice cream fell to the floor, which probably infuriated her more than anything. She growled. I growled, sinking my teeth into her nose. Her nails pierced my scalp. I pulled back and wrapped my hands around her neck, then squeezed until she died. Maybe I should say more after all these years, but that's how I think of it, because I can't think about it. I ran back into the apartment and grabbed the money and bag. I realized that I needed something to help carry them because of the blackout, so I grabbed my mini grocery cart. If I could roll a mini grocery cart from the Bowery to Port Authority, I could find that somewhere else. I told myself to put 1 foot forward. I didn't look at the extra when I passed him in the hallway. I just kept moving. Manhattan's easy to walk, I thought. The blackout won't last forever. I can disappear, I told myself, wiping sweat from my eyes. All I have to do is endure one hell of a bus ride with a few stops in between. Around 6th and 8th, a bodega owner stood in front of his bodega, passing out all sorts of goodies. He waved a can of beer and a sandwich at me. Where are you going? I'm disappearing, I said. How wonderful for you. Here, you have to take something. I can't run the register or anything. Just take it. Other bodega owners did the same thing, so when the buses started rolling again, I did ride drunk. I managed to disappear from everyone but myself. I have moved so many times, looking for some place. Wherever I go, I waft in with a look like a girlfriend and leave a stench like garbage.